Hello and welcome to today's EcoCast, Modernizing and Securing Healthcare IT. Today's event is produced by ActualTech Media and sponsored by KnowBe4, Duo, Datrium, Zerto, Clumio, and Nutanix. This is going to be an awesome healthcare IT event. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us on this EcoCast. If you haven't been on an EcoCast before, you should know that ActualTech Media created the EcoCast and MegaCast event series to help educate IT professionals such as yourselves about the latest and greatest in enterprise technology to help you do it quickly and efficiently without ever having to leave your home or office, to help you get all your questions answered, and to give you a chance to win some very valuable prizes. Now, before I introduce you to today's keynote presenter, we have a little bit of housekeeping we first need to cover. As I said, we want you to get all your questions answered. So there is a questions tab. It's just to the right of the handouts tab there on your audience console. If you click on the word questions, you'll be brought to the questions tab, and it's there that you should enter all of your questions pertaining to today's topic. We'll do our best to get all those questions answered throughout the event, and we'll be teeing up the best questions for the dedicated Q&A sessions that we'll be doing with each of today's presenters. We'll also have a few poll questions for you, our audience, throughout the event, and we appreciate your participation in those. We want this to be a social event. We'll be tweeting about this event over on Twitter. The hashtag for today's event is ATM EcoCast. And if you tweet using the Twitter icon on the bottom of your audience console, that hashtag will be automatically appended. And the first time that you use that, you'll have to do the standard Twitter authorization, of course, which is kept between you and Twitter. We have a number of resources available for you. Those are on the handouts tab. We have some links. We have some PDF resources. These are hand selected by today's presenters, so make sure that you check those out. And finally, we have prizes. We have 2 Microsoft Surface Pro 6s to give away on today's event. The primary requirement to be eligible for these prize drawings is that you must be live on the event to qualify. If you're watching this event on demand, I'm sorry, the drawing has already occurred. The winner will be announced live by the moderator on the event, and there are a number of other prize terms and conditions that you should be aware of. You can find those in the handouts tab where it says ActualTech Media Prize Terms and Conditions, or on our website, events.actualtechmedia.com. All prize winners must submit an IRS form W-9 to ActualTech Media. Now, through the EcoCast and MegaCast event series, we have given out thousands of dollars to charities, thanks to generous attendees such as yourselves who win prizes and then choose to donate that prize value to charity. If you'd like to do that, we would love to help you. This year, we've chosen to select the Diane Fossey Gorilla Fund and the One Tree Planted charity. We've done this in partnership with the Gorilla Guide Book Club. You can find the Gorilla Guide Book Club at gorilla.guide, where you can download your own library of free enterprise technology books. Make sure you check it out at gorilla.guide. Thank you in advance if you would like to help us support one of these charities. As I said, the hashtag for today's event is ATM EcoCast. You can follow ActualTech Media on Twitter. We are at ActualTech Media. You can also follow today's moderator, that is James Green or JD Green, on Twitter as well. Don't forget to subscribe to the ActualTech Media YouTube channel, Facebook page, and the 10 on Tech podcast. You can find links to those on the top right-hand corner of your audience console. The 10 on Tech podcast is a great way to keep up to date on what's going on in the enterprise technology industry in about 10 minutes. Also, make sure you follow ActualTech Media over on Twitter. This is where we post our latest and greatest content, including interviews, free books, and upcoming events. And with that, I'm excited to introduce today's keynote presenter. That is Mr. Keith Townsend, founder of the CTO Advisor. You can find Keith on Twitter at CTO Advisor or on his website, thectoadvisor.com. Keith is a well-known industry expert, speaker, presenter, and advisor to CTOs around the world. Take it away, Keith.
Hey, it's Keith Townsend, principal of the CTO Advisor. Thank you to my friends at ActualTech Media for allowing me to talk to you today about ransomware in your healthcare enterprise IT environment. We're going to talk about 4 different areas about preventing and recovering from ransomware. If you want to learn more about me, you can find me on the web. TheCTOadvisor.com is the blog, And at CTO Advisors is where you can find me on Twitter. So first off, education. Education is by far the easiest and most effective way in preventing the malware that leads to ransomware. A lot of organizations are getting really creative with running campaigns to test employees' capabilities to resist that $25 gift card to Amazon, which leads to so much malware, which in turn leads to exfiltration and encryption of data and malware and ransomware ransoms. Step two, or the second major area of focus, is encryption. Encryption has gotten to the point with accelerations on the desktop side, on Macs and PCs, card readers, etc., that the overhead once associated with encryption, or at least the performance overhead associated with encryption, has lessened. As a matter of fact, we can look at two specific areas of encryption. So encryption at rest, meaning your local disk, whether those disks are sitting on a server, a workstation, or within your storage arrays. These systems now build in the level of encryption that can help prevent simple ransomware attacks without a lot of system overhead. But system overhead isn't the only consideration. There's key management. You might want to look into a centralized key management system from either Microsoft or AWS, etc., to make sure that key management doesn't become your Achilles heel when it comes to encryption at rest. Subpoint to encryption is encryption in transit. So obviously, as we're talking about internet-based communications, we're going to depend, hopefully, on the latest version of TLS to encrypt the data that's leaving our organization. But you might want to give some consideration to network access control and encrypting traffic from workstation to workstation, or from client to server. There's plenty of products on the market now that will do zero trust from workstation to workstation and from workstation to server. So encryption in transit is something that you want to consider. The next topic is exfiltration. It is related to the point of encryption in transit, in the sense that you want to make sure your data patterns are matching that of real applications. So again, some of these same tools I pre-mentioned you can use to have zero trust, but if a workstation is communicating with another workstation, is that a data pattern, whether the data is encrypted or not, is that a data pattern that your organization or your applications typically have? Or a Oracle server talking to a SQL server, is that traffic pattern an expected pattern? And then obviously, when we have data leaving the organization, are large amounts of encrypted data leaving a workstation or IoT endpoint that really shouldn't be leaving the organization? This is where the bad actors are really advancing the practice of ransomware by exfiltrating the data, then deleting your data in place and not allowing you to simply restore the data because the data's been deleted, or pay for the ransom because the data's been deleted. So exfiltration is a big consideration. Then the last topic we want to talk about is recovery. Obviously, you've heard this time and time again: backup, 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 critical systems. And you're not going to hear anything new from me when it comes to the backup solutions. We get this. We need immutable backups that if it's encrypted, if our desktops, our servers are encrypted, that we can recover those encrypted files from a system that wasn't susceptible to the malware. However, the consistent trend that I've seen in these recovery stories is the time to recovery. So the RTO, recovery time objective. You need to treat this just like you treat DR. Can I recover my critical systems in a timely manner? I've seen these recovery efforts stretch a week or more in crippled organizations. So you want to start with a minimum, a tabletop recovery exercise, thinking through how much data do I need to recover from my critical Oracle database, and how long would it take to recover that system? How long would it take to recover the application servers, the client servers, and what's the criticality to my business for recovering those systems? Sure, I can recover my desktops within a day, but if the back end isn't available, there's not much point. Then you want to move from a maturity level of doing tabletop exercises to doing actual disaster recovery or ransomware recovery exercises, where you're doing mock recoveries in your virtualized environment to understand how long would it take to recover from an actual event. You want to learn more about the CTO Advisor, again, you can visit us on the web, thectoadvisor.com. You can reach out to me on Twitter at CTO Advisor if you have more questions. I hope you enjoy the rest of this megacast.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Keith. This is James Green. I'm excited to be with you all today, and we're going to go ahead and get started with our first presentation from KnowBe4 in a minute here. But I'm going to ask a poll question before we do that. I'm just curious to kind of help us frame, especially the Q&A that we do later. I'd love to know, if you're working on a project right now, what the time frame for that project looks like. That's just going to help us frame in the Q&A questions in a way that's most meaningful to you. And it just helps us understand who's sitting in the audience today, and helps us speak more intelligently to the problems that you're facing and what you might be trying to work through right now. We want to send you away today with some actionable stuff that you can use in the projects that you're working on, and this will help us with that. Fantastic. Lots of you have responded. Thank you for that. That's helpful to us. And I'm going to go ahead and keep moving. So next up in today's presentations, we're going to hear from KnowBe4. We've got James McQuiggan with us. James, are you there?
I'm here. Hi, James.
Fantastic. James, this won't be confusing at all.
No.
James is a security awareness advocate at KnowBe4, and we're fortunate to have James here with us today. James, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you to talk to us about ransomware and healthcare today.
Great. Thank you very much, James. Appreciate it. Real excited to be here, talk with everybody today. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be listening at some point in the day. So as James mentioned, I'm a security awareness advocate with KnowBe4. Essentially, my role is to promote cybersecurity awareness to the community across all the different industries. I've been in the IT space working for about 20 years, variety of different positions with a little German company named Siemens regarding security awareness, product security, working in that industrial control system space, which I've found over the years is very similar in ways with regards to programs and procedures to the healthcare space. So let's dive right into this. Real quick, just KnowBe4, we're one of the world's largest security awareness training simulated phishing platform organizations. Essentially, our mission is to allow you to enable your employees to make smarter security decisions every day through the aspect of social engineering, whether it's phishing scams or social engineering, and allow them to make those right decisions. So, all right, so let's get going with this. I'm pretty confident that everybody is familiar with the different ransomware attacks that have been going on with a variety of medical institutions, hospitals, dental offices, MSSPs, the service providers that are out there. They're all getting targeted. And I think one of the first questions is asked is why are hospitals so easily targeted? I think because of the fact that human life is involved, but also, and I know from my experience in the ICS space, the hospitals are very limited based on regulation. And I don't mean limited in a bad way, but there are things that they have to comply with regards to compliance, whether it's HIPAA, what operating systems can be used, how you identify what systems you have, and so forth. And when it comes to doing a lot of those updates with Windows operating systems, and the applications, it doesn't happen as quickly because availability is extremely high and important inside the healthcare industry, especially at a hospital. You can't just have a system go down because it needs to be patched. It has to always be available for the surgeries or for monitoring patient care and so forth. One of the other issues, we've seen where hospitals have been attacked and they've ended up having to pay the ransom. Usually either through nation state and having to pay Bitcoin. And so there's that whole process. These are hospitals that are trying to take care of people, not having to figure out how to go get Bitcoin wallets and load it up with money and send that money off to whoever's infected their environments and hacked through to it. So real quick, I think a lot of folks are probably familiar, but looking at the anatomy of attack, you have attackers, they go through and they do recon. They're doing reconnaissance on their target and looking at the networks. And they're using social media. LinkedIn is a big one where they're figuring out who are people at the hospitals. And once they start figuring out who that is, then they start to compromise where they're using email, whether they're sending targeted spear phishing emails or just general phishing emails to the environment. And somebody essentially ends up clicking on a link, allowing the access for the bad actors to be able to get inside the network. And then once they get in there, they're going around examining all the different systems, pivoting off different servers, getting into different locations, and then eventually are looking at exfiltrating data. Or if it's a ransomware attack, they're going through and deleting backups, learning about the system, and then essentially encrypting it afterward. And a lot of the time they're trying to maintain their presence as well, so that they can continue later on if the systems are hit with ransomware, figuring out a way to be able to stay in that system after the fact. So ransomware essentially early on was a nuisance attack. You got hit, it encrypted your files, you had to pay $300 per system or whatever the amount was. But now we're finding that the criminal actors are stepping up their game. They are now looking at getting in, using ransomware as a data breach, getting into the system, doing what they need to do, and then when they've been able to collect all the information, they're now encrypting the system. It is coming through a phishing or some other social engineering type of attack. They're stealing the data that you have on your systems. Most of the time, they're leaving the operating system intact because they still need you to be able to turn it on and see the note. And of course, this is a huge reduction on productivity, IT resources, production resources, the healthcare systems, the doctors. They can't use the systems, and it makes things a lot easier. Other types of ransomware attacks that we have seen is where they are actually deleting the data and not even giving you an opportunity to be able to recover after that, unless you've got your backups already in place. We've seen a variety of different ransomware over the years, different types, whether it's CryptoLocker, later Locker Gaga, Robinhood's been another one. Ryuk is one of the big ones that's out there right now that's targeting systems and encrypting them and creating a lot of headaches for the different organizations. Not only are we seeing them happen to Windows machines, but we're also seeing them happen to Android systems as well. So you get your phone encrypted, and then it really slows you down. But this can also happen on Android tablets as well as the Android phones. Haven't seen it hit any type of iPhone yet, but we have seen it targeted and hit on some of the Android devices that are out there. So they're susceptible as well as your Windows systems as well. So let's have a look at some of the different attack vectors that are going on. So this chart here shows some of the recent attacks. This is from back in October 2019. Going back several years, and there's the spike that's in there at the very beginning is the Anthem and Blue Cross data breach that happened back in 2015, where you had 114 million records. But this chart's showing you all the different data breaches and the amount of information that's been stolen and the records per year. Last year alone, there was already 38 million records that were stolen, whether it's patient information, PII, things that healthcare organizations need to be able to protect. And so the ransomware is causing a lot of headaches for folks that are out there that are trying to protect your network environments. So the different causes that usually that are causing this: unauthorized access to disclosure. That's coming in through some type of phishing access or phishing scam. Then you have your hacking and IT incidents. Usually that's either unconfigured systems, either they're not been configured properly or they haven't been updated. Sometimes there's been some causes because of loss. You know, someone's had database working on it, had it on their laptop, lost it. It goes off that way, or it's actually been stolen. But usually what you end up happening with these ransomware attacks is the hospital organizations, the medical organizations can't pay, they don't have any backups, and they have a loss of data. That's almost a double whammy for folks. Either they've, at some point they had felt that they didn't need to have the backups, or it was backed up, but when the bad guys got in, they ended up targeting and taking out the backups as well. And the amount of money that's needed to pay sometimes it's impossible, especially on some of the smaller businesses that operate in the medical field. So your hospitals are your big targets. We had the one in France. You had the 400 dental practices late last year. And of course, you've got these medical IT vendors. They're getting targeted who support nursing homes and other medical facilities, and their systems go down. And the people that are working in for example, the healthcare, the senior care living, they can't look up the medications, or they can't look up allergies or patient records because the medical IT provider had been taken down, hit with ransomware, and essentially were unable to take care of the patients. So here's another example of a ransomware attack. Here you've got Emotet, very similar to what the graph that was shown before, but specifically with Emotet is coming in through a PDF or a Word doc. They're trying to get users to click on the link, open up the attachment, using some type of social engineering to get the end user to open it up and enable the macros. A lot of the time is if it's sensitive information that they're trying to get the person to be curious. They're essentially working on bypassing what we call the OODA loop, which is OODA, observe, orient, detect, decide, and act. And basically, the attackers are relying on the fact that they can get the people just to see something, strike up a curiosity, a fear, or some other emotion that makes them take that knee-jerk reaction, open up, they need to see what's in there, and enable the macros, and then it gets released in there. Once it's released into the system, then it's going through and doing the reconnaissance. It's connecting out to command and control servers, or C2, and it's sending files back and forth, whether it's exfiltrating data, downloading new malware versions, and so forth, and stealing credentials along the way, most likely creating new credentials once the attackers get in. So all in all, the ransomware is now essentially, you need to think of it as a data breach. If you've been thinking about that already, fantastic. A lot of people I know still think of it as a nuisance, but now that we've seen these evolutions with ransomware, they're doing a lot more when they get in there. It's not just a matter of getting in, encrypting the data, and then waiting for the money to show up. They're taking further steps. They're infiltrating the network. They're deleting the backups. They may be even installing other Trojans, other malware, stealing data before the encryption, which is the scary part as well, because they're in your system, they're taking the data, and then essentially holding that for ransom as well, which is what one particular group called the Maze Group, they ended up getting in and encrypting the information, and they stole it before everything got encrypted. And they essentially said, you either need to pay us, or we're going to leak your information online unless you pay us. These were sophisticated attack groups that got in. They were using, the victims had the latest Windows security updates were installed. They had their applications all up to date as well. And so even following basic cyber hygiene, the criminals were using particular exploits, ones that hadn't been discovered, and gained access, and were stealing the data and threatening to make the people pay. So literally holding your data for ransom so that you pay or they release it. So that brings us to the question, okay, so do we really stand a chance? I'm gonna be positive and say we do if we can follow certain certain procedures and follow certain practices. A lot of talk has been around artificial intelligence, machine language, with regards to the technology aspect. There's a human element to all this with those phishing emails, but when emails are coming in, there's an artificial intelligence machine language capabilities that can be implemented with the technology, especially when it comes to finding the phishing emails coming in and then seeing if everybody else has that email in their inbox, and if it is, getting it removed. Those type of options are available as well. But the thing to think about also is the bad guys that are out there, these groups, they've bought the same hardware that a lot of organizations have bought as well, because they're taking that hardware and throwing their emails against it. And if it goes through, then they know they've got an email that can work, and they start using those. If it doesn't, well, they throw that away and they try again. So the different tactics they're using, they're working to try and make sure that they can get through the systems as well. Other preventative measures, cyber insurance is a good thing. Check the fine print though, because sometimes they won't cover the cost of the ransom. They'll just cover your recovery costs of resources. The other thing to consider would be a line item in the budget. If you were to be hit with ransomware, can you handle the downtime? Whether you can't see patients, if it's a small business, if it's a hospital, what does that do? Got to switch back to manual operations, or do you even think about considering paying the money? So there's a couple things to think about. Of course, backups is always the key. We've always said, granted, the bad guys are deleting the backups, but that's why it's always important to have an off-premise backup or an off-network backup. You may even have cloud environment as well that you're using. But the key here is test the backups. We heard earlier in that video presentation about your recovery, doing those tabletop exercises. It's really important that you do go through those tabletop exercises, how long it takes to recover, because you are going to be down for several days, and making sure that you understand what are the critical systems within your organization and making sure those are protected and that you can recover those as quickly as possible in the event that they do get hit. Training people. So we talked about the technology aspects. This is the human element of this, where people need to understand how to spot a phishing email when it comes in. 90% of the data breaches are happening because of phishing emails. The organizations when they're using technology to stop these phishing emails or the emails coming in, they stop millions of emails a day, but there's still about 20 to 25% of the phishing emails that still actually get through. And so people have to be aware of how to spot those and look for those in the different red flags that are out there. And people need to understand what spam is, phishing, spear phishing, ransomware, and social engineering, and be able to still do their day-to-day job, but also be able to figure that out and have that training provided and on a regular basis, not just a 30-minute power presentation, but something that's engaging, interactive for the folks. With regards to phishing, people without any type of training, we've noticed through our studies, almost about a 30% chance or phishing prone across the board. In any type of industry you're in, healthcare, right around 25 to 30%, depending on the number of employees. But you're going to hit about a 30%. 1 in 3 people are going to be hit with be able to not recognize and essentially click on a link. So if you are a victim, what ends up happening is now you need to consider, all right, is it a deal or no deal? How is that going to work? You're going to avoid paying the ransom. If you do, sometimes if you don't pay the ransom, you're then have got to be able to restore from your backups, and you've got to be able to check those. Other times you might be able to use a decrypting service. If you can upload the file. There are several decrypting nonprofit free groups that are out there. You can send them a data file. They'll check to see if they can decrypt it. If they can, they'll send it to you. You get the key, and then you can decrypt. Either way, if you end up paying or you end up decrypting it or you're able to restore from backups, one of the things you want to do is be able to check to make sure that the bad actors that are out there can't get back in. Essentially, you have to wipe the systems, and if you have your backups, restore the backup and then do the backup you're going to wipe your system essentially, then restore from backup. And then hopefully that will keep the bad guys that are out from there at that point that have been in there. They should be wiped out. But essentially what you may end up having to do is do a full clean of the whole system, unfortunately, because once one thing gets infected, there's no telling whether or not the other systems have been infected as well. Some best practice and tips, we've touched upon these already. Train your users, have your backups, segment your network, have your critical systems isolated from other parts of other systems. So if the bad guys end up getting in, that you can isolate those. Implementing principle of least privilege, only allow the necessary people that are allowed to have access. If you've got interfacing RDP, get rid of it, figure out another way to VPN. Having open RDP is an easy target for the bad guys, and we're always looking for that. And then work to try and keep up with the patches and the updates. Asset scanning, vulnerability scanning, those are two key items. A lot of InfoSec CISOs are aware of those, and it's a matter of getting either people in to do it or having the resources. But it's important to be able to understand what you have so you can protect it, and then scan it regularly to make sure that it's not vulnerable, because if you're not scanning it, the bad guys are, and they'll find the vulnerability to get in. You look at training, awareness, and compliance. Training essentially is you put people in the classroom, you give an assessment at the end, you see if they've taken on the information. Awareness, that's more behavioral. That is something that you do because it's something you are. You walk to the end of the street, you look left, you look right. You're doing that because you don't want to get hit by a car. Awareness of getting a phishing email or a strange email, you look at it, the link doesn't look right, and you go, okay, this has got to be phishing. Looking at against compliance. Compliance is the checking the box, making sure you're doing something that's supported by governance. But you want to have your folks aware of the different attacks that are going out there, and essentially have good cyber hygiene. Within the medical field, it's all about keeping away the infections, getting rid of infections, not introducing new infections. Everything going on with the coronavirus right now is put everybody on heightened hygiene. The same thing applies in the cyber world. You want to make sure that you're aware of those social engineering scams that are out there, doing the updates, backups, and so forth. You want to continue to test those employees regularly. You're going to train them, educate them, then you're going to phish them, and then you look at the results. Essentially, one of the things we've seen, we've gotten approvals from, or high marks from Forrester, from Gardner, regarding our program. It's got a quick ROI, it works, and comes through. So here are some quick final thoughts for you. This is one of my personal favorites, but think about, how did the hackers get away from the police? They ransomware. So I can't hear everybody groaning, but I'm sure I've got a lot of eye rolls and everything else. But something to consider with all the ransomware attacks that are going on, there's a lot of IoT devices that are out there and IoT devices out there, whether it's your fridge, your thermostat, your Alexa, your camera. We've been seeing attacks that have gone on in the past. If they continue to happen, you might get a note saying, all right, if you want to turn you want us to turn your camera back on, you've got to pay us so much money. And essentially, you need to make sure that those things don't happen, and making sure that you're also keeping your home protected, as well as those IoT devices. Finally, the security awareness does work. We've noticed when you go through and give them the training and do the phishing assessments, you're looking at going down from about 30% down to about 2% over the course of the year. It's not foolproof. It's not 100%, but it's a lot better than 1 in 3. Now you're looking at even higher numbers than that. So a lot less opportunity and risk of becoming infected. Just a variety of and resources of tools that we've got available. Ransomware hostage rescue manual. We have a domain spoofing tool, which helps you check to see if your domain can be spoofed, especially regarding those phishing tests. So, questions? I know it was a lot in 20 minutes, so any questions?
Fantastic. I do have some here, so I'm going to throw up a poll question for folks while we chat.
Sure.
A couple of good ones from the audience here. So I'm going to paraphrase this a little bit, but essentially the question is, do you have any advice for how to respond if either you kind of know that you have been infiltrated by a phishing attack, or maybe it's just that you suspect it? So we talked a lot about prevention, and I think you gave a few tips for response, but anything further to say about how to respond?
Respond to the attackers or just internal response?
More like internal response, I think, is the question here.
Sure.
Like, what should we be doing?
Yeah. So your incident response team is going to be heavily involved with that, and having a playbook on how to deal with ransomware, that allows you just to be able to pull that off the shelf. You don't want to be dealing with ransomware as a first time. You want to be do a tabletop exercise with it. What do we need to do? Who needs to be involved? If a system if it's just one system, if you've received an email and you've clicked on the link and you know it's from an external, I've seen organizations in the past, they say, well, we're not taking any chances. The system needs to be wiped. It is a loss of downtime for that employee, and then the IT person that's got to do the re-imaging. But usually there's a risk that you take if you think, or antivirus, if there was any phishing or any type of malware that'd be installed, the antivirus would take it, but that's not always the case. There still is malware out there that hasn't been detected by the anti-malware, so it's always a good practice. If you know it's been hit with a phishing email and they clicked on a link, your best bet, the safest bet, is to wipe the machine as you continue to run the risk of it could have been possibly exploited.
Okay. There's a couple of questions here that I would classify as about validation to make sure that you're as secure as you can be. How often should you be testing your backups? How often should you run a third-party penetration test? Stuff like that. So this is kind of open-ended, but what are your thoughts about kind of just validating that you're as secure as you want to be?
And that comes down to how secure you want to make yourself feel.
Right.
Your vulnerability assessments, you want to do them at least annually. If you've got a long way to go and you've got a lot of vulnerabilities you've discovered, I would do that like every quarter or every 6 months. There was the vulnerability assessments. What was the other one? Phishing? Was that phishing?
How often should you test your backups?
Test your backups.
Restore testing to make sure you've got what you want.
Most likely, you definitely need to be testing them every year. Again, if you've got the resources and capabilities, every 6 months. You don't have to do the entire full backup because that could take you a week. But if you have a particular server, the critical systems that you have, you may want to be doing do a test recovery of a backup every 6 months, because you want to make sure that it hasn't been degraded. I've seen it happen where we've gone to restore a backup, and the last time we did it was 2 years ago, and we've got to corrupt data for the last 18 months, kind of a thing. So it's important that you do it. There are integrity checks and things that you can do to make sure the data is still intact, but at least once a year.
Yeah, I know it depends is not the answer anybody wants, but I guess it really comes down to what's your RPO, how much data are you prepared to lose, right?
Yeah, and it can depend on the size of your organization. Small, medium business may do it yearly. Enterprise organizations, you'd have the resources, you could do it every 6 months.
Regulations too, right? What do you have to be able to say you can do?
Right. Yeah, your compliance. They'll want you to do it every 15 months or every year. So it just depends on it'll come down to the level of security that you want to, or the risk you want to accept.
Right. Okay. One more here, I think.
Sure.
I know that a lot of people are concerned with whether or not to pay the ransom, and in a lot of cases, paying the ransom can kind of feel like you're just you're helping the problem get worse.
Right.
Do you have any thoughts about whether or not they should pay and how to respond to explicit request for a ransom?
Yeah. So the FBI's position is don't pay. But now with this kind of evolution where they're now going to leak your intellectual property, that's kind of one of the reasons a lot of people have gone with cyber insurance, so that protects them financially. They make the payment, but then they have the recovery and everything else. That's what the insurance is covering. For me, I'm still kind of in the position of, I wouldn't pay. I recommend not paying because you are fueling that. But it's going to depend on the level of risk that the organization is willing to accept. How much data are they going to lose if they don't have the backups? If they are going to threaten to leak the information, you've got that issue as well. Another real quick thing, right at the end of 2019, there was he was a plastic surgeon. He got hit with ransomware. They stole all the patient data, and then they went after the patients saying, we've got all pictures and documentation on you. You pay us $300 over releasing the information. So now that evolution, it's getting even more muddying the waters, so to speak, and it's not clear cut to say, yeah, don't pay the ransom, just rely on your backups or start all over, essentially. Now you're putting your business at risk.
Got it. Well, James, thank you so much for being on the EcoCast today.
My pleasure, James. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Next up, we've got our friend Carolyn Seymour from Zerto to speak to us. Carolyn, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can. Hey, we're glad to have you here today. I'm going to kick it over to you and let you get going.
Great. So let me just make sure I can click the next. Yep. There we go. Perfect.
Looks
well,
good.
Hi, everybody. Are we good?
Yes, we're good.
Hi, everybody.
I was just confirming I saw it move. Thanks, Carolyn.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. And hi, everybody, and glad to be here today. I'm Caroline Seymour, and the VP of Product Marketing here at Zerto. And so what I want to spend the next few minutes talking to you about is how we can actually help you modernize and secure your IT. And we talk to a lot of healthcare organizations and have many healthcare organizations as customers. And as we sort of talk to them, we see more and more sort of the virtual and digital care collaboration that's happening, an escalating pace of medical advances, as well as also disease research and clinical patient protocols. And the other aspect, too, is the compliance to the safety regulations and patient data access, and not to mention the accountable care. Now, all of these are reasons that necessitate having the right technology solution in place to protect and also modernize your healthcare IT organization, especially those, you're relying on a lot of data-driven care and outcomes. And so it's no longer optional. To me, it's crucial for the patient care as we look to go forward. So when you think about modernizing and securing IT, it means that an IT organization must really look at and manage all of the disruptions to the business. And we look at it in two categories. One is unplanned and planned. And if you think about the unplanned disruptions, and if they're not managed and automated, that will hinder the success of any modernization project that you have, that is the projects that drive growth and deliver new applications to the business. And so if we take a closer look at this, I mentioned unplanned and planned, and I look at it, you could argue it's sort of the bad disruptions to the business and the good disruptions to the business. The unplanned is the what ifs. So these are the sort of the disruptions that you can see here that happen when perhaps a disaster strikes, such as maybe a natural disaster or an infrastructure failure. And I've added here ransomware, and I was just listening to the end of the last speaker, and that was talking about cyber attacks and ransomware. And it can be, because if a ransomware actually gets through, that can grind your whole system to a halt. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But then there are other types of disruptions. So say, for example, somebody has deleted a file, or maybe in the fact that a database gets corrupted, or you may need to be able to recover a file or some data for compliance reasons, so some sort of compliance recovery. So you've got sort of operational recovery and long-term retention that can cause disruptions. And these unplanned disruptions are what that really puts a drain on the IT staff. They put a drain on the staff, the time, and also your budget. And so handling these unplanned outages need to be simple, automated, and they need to be able to cover 100% of your business requirements whilst minimizing the resource and the processes that it takes. And then you see on the right-hand side the planned. And so IT must constantly evaluate, and I'm sure you all are, in looking at how to integrate new technologies into your operations. And that's needed to be able to keep pace with the expectations of the business, of your healthcare organization, and also to reduce costs. And so these business driving initiatives, so things like maybe you're looking at migrations or consolidations of your data centers for more efficiencies. Maybe it's moving to cloud, the ability to be able to move your on-premises environment into a cloud environment. Ensuring the fact that you are protected in the cloud as well. What about perhaps testing new software, which is always necessary, as well as also being able to do patch testing, infrastructure modernization as a whole, adding new types of level of technology. Now, these are all sort of what we call the planned disruptions. And so if you can react more efficiently to the unplanned by being able to automate those, you will be able to align your resources to those ones that are the planned disruptions, that are good disruptions to your business, that really is driving innovation and business value. And so when you actually take a look at our platform, and we call it the Zerto IT Resilience Platform, our platform is software only, and it's based on a foundation of continuous data protection. And it converges the functions of disaster recovery, operational recovery, the long-term data retention requirements for compliance, hybrid, multi-cloud mobility, and also the operational services, things such as your migrations and testing and so forth. We've also built in orchestration and automation into the platform so that you can really automate those manual processes. And this is where, in fact, you can automate those manual processes that really sort of is a drain on your resource around those unplanned, the disaster recovery, operational recovery, those type of things. So then you can align your resources to better focus on what's driving the business forward, such as those planned disruptions around maybe moving to cloud. And then in addition, you can see wrapped around here is the fact that we have analytics and control. And we've built, and this is out of the box, and we built in dashboards and reports that provide you with complete visibility across your multi-site, multi-cloud environment to ensure that the SLAs that you have in place are met, so the SLAs of the business. And then, of course, being software only, we're storage and hardware agnostic. But we also have very deep integration with, as you can see here, some of the strategic vendors I've listed on this specific slide. So if we look at the sort of the core or the Zerto difference, the four key advantages that this, that the software-only platform that we have makes us different to other vendors in the marketplace. And I'm going to cover these in more detail, one by one. But first is our best-of-breed hypervisor-based replication, and it's native and it's agentless. And what this does is to ensure that you can deliver continuous availability to your healthcare organization, which is absolutely critical when you think about patient care. Second is our unique journaling technology to ensure that you can recover and resume from any point in time from seconds to years. Third is the moving or recovering of data. Third is about the application consistency. And when you think about it, it's not only just about recovering data. It has to be about ensuring that you can recover your application. All of your applications are recovered as one entity. So it's about application consistency, and I'll go into that more detail in a moment. And then lastly is simplicity, because it's at the core of everything that we do and we've brought with our platform. Simplicity of deployment, ease of use, built-in orchestration, as well as also analytics. So if we take a closer look at each one of these, we first introduced hypervisor-based replication back in 2009, and we really revolutionized the way that people did replication. We simplified it by moving it up to the hypervisor layer. And what we did also was to include all the automation and orchestration in one solution so that it can actually replace everything that you were trying to do before in one simple-to-use software-only platform. And as I mentioned before, it actually removes any lock-in to the hardware and the storage itself. And this hypervisor-based replication removes any impact to production and removes the need for scheduling, such as you have with backups and so forth, because there are no snapshots or agents, and so therefore we're ensuring that you're always protected. So if we take a closer look at the continuous data replication on premises, so it is easy to install, as you can, and here, and I'm just going to build this out a little bit. It's easy to install. I'll let this build out as we actually go through here. And here. Oh, no, I'm going to go back. So that didn't quite work, but okay, let me do this one again. So we'll start off with each build. So it's easy to install and deploy, and actually it really only takes up to an hour to install. And we have a one-to-one relationship with the hypervisor-based management component, and as you can see here, the vCenter. And that's where you install the Zerto Virtual Manager. And we have a very small footprint with a scale-out architecture with built-in compression and bandwidth throttling. And it also has components for the backup and restore. And then with its block level, continuous block level replication, it ensures that there's no impact to production. And as I mentioned before, there's no snapshots and there's no agents. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the journal, but all of the blocks are replicated to the journal in the target site. And when you think about it, or rather simply put, it's a log that contains all of your changes. That's what the journal is, that occurred on the VM and therefore offers seconds of granularity and can scale up and down dynamically. So if we look at on the cloud side of it, so the supporting sort of the Hyper-V and vSphere environment is the cloud, because we support replication and failover and mobility to and from, as you can see here, the different clouds to offer a true multi-cloud architecture. And the architecture that you see here on the production site on the left, is exactly the same as what you saw on the previous slide, that when we were replicating to, say, on-premises with vSphere. The source site has just the Zerto Cloud Appliance, software only again, which manages the actual replication. So say you're going to Azure. Zerto will continuously replicate to blob storage in Azure. There's no VMs that are built until there is actually a failover. And then the replica disks are stored in page blobs, and the journal data is stored in block blobs. And then if you have AWS, for example, as you can see here, Zerto will continuously replicate to S3 storage. So, and again, there's no VMs that are built until there's a failover. The key thing here is whether you're on premises or whether you're on cloud, the user has the same user experience across all of these platforms, on premises or cloud. And we have many healthcare organizations that are using Zerto now to leverage cloud as their DR site. And when you think about it, leveraging cloud for your DR site is probably the easiest ways of leveraging cloud. And of course, this really does help with the modernization requirements for reducing your physical estate, for example, for a DR site and so forth. So now if we look at the journal, I said I'd talk about the journal. You can see here, this is what is actually very unique about Zerto, is the journal. And it's critical for your business because what you see here are that lots of different checkpoints in time. And so, for example, if a ransomware attack happens, malware comes through, or a file is deleted, say at 10 o'clock, with the Zerto journal, you can actually recover to within 5 seconds. And this can be set up to whether it's 5 or 10, but by default it's 5 seconds of when that disaster struck or when the file was deleted, so that there is little or virtually no data loss. Now, if you're using some of the more traditional recovery solutions, but maybe like snapshots or backups, you have to resort to your last backup or snapshot. And the problem is, if your last snapshot was, say, at 6 a.m. here as an example, you can have up to 4 hours of data loss. What if your backup was 24 hours ago? you're losing up to 24 hours of data loss. And I guess you've got to consider, can you afford that as part of your, in your business? And I've mentioned ransomware because what we're seeing is with the journal, it is allowing people to recover very, very quickly. And here is an example. This is Dotwell. They're based in Boston. They're a community-based organization that basically provided an integrated clinical and community services. And they were hit by a CryptoLocker virus, and that was before Zerto, and that's when they decided to get Zerto in. And then sometime later, they were hit again with another strain of the CryptoLocker virus. And as you can see here, they were back up and running to within 15 minutes. And I think that the biggest impact here is that there was no disruption to the patient care. Because if you do get hit and you can't recover from a backup, the impact of your business is really about the patient care and potential impact of what procedures cannot be executed whilst your system is down. And so as you can see here, considerable impact. And so this is a good example of recovery. Most companies, you know, when if you think about it, focus on the prevention of, say, ransomware, but it's likely that an attack will happen and it will get through your perimeter despite all of your prevention strategy. And in a recent IDC study we did, or rather IDC did, they said that out of the 500 respondents, 84% said that they had been attacked. 89% of those that had been attacked said successfully attacked. And 94% of those suffered data loss. And most of those were running backup. And then when you actually start to look at the cost of downtime, IDC estimates the cost is about sort of $250,000 per hour. So overall, when you consider data loss, time to recovery, and let alone your brand damage and unable to care for your patients, the cost is huge, very, very high for healthcare organizations. So the key here really is the fact that as part of your security strategy, prevention alone is not the answer. You need to have a recovery strategy, and that's where we play. We have many customers like Dotwell that put Zerto in place as part of their security strategy to ensure that when it does happen, that they can actually recover within minutes. Now, I mentioned about applications because data is one piece of the puzzle, but to solve for, you know, the challenge of recovering complex applications, enterprise applications, you need to be able to protect all your VMs as one cohesive logical entity. And that way you avoid inconsistent recovery of multi-VM applications. And that's a challenge you have with backups in the sense that you have to know the right order, fidelity, and how each of the VMs are actually put together. So when creating recovery points with Zerto, all the VMs will share the exact same recovery point so that when the application is recovered, every VM that contains the application will spin up from that same cross-application recovery point. And so all of this should be guaranteed. All of this is guaranteed where the VMs are located within the infrastructure itself. So as we look at, I mentioned there's a fourth key advantage that Zerto delivers is the fact that simplicity is the core of what we do. Everything that we have, that is a key tenet that we deliver, from installation to deployment to ease of use and management. Zerto provides one interface and one experience, whether you are protecting or moving your data on premises and cloud, to really simplify the management of the recovery, management of migrations, and all of the other use cases that we talked about. We built in that orchestration automation so that we can ensure that you can automate your manual processes, so that when you're dealing with disaster recovery or recovery of any type, you can automate those processes. And then we built in analytics so that you actually have full visibility and control of your protected environment. And one other thing I wanted to mention here is there was something that jogged my thought process on the previous presentation was about testing of backups and so forth, or testing environment. You can, because there's no production impact, test very easily. And we have many customers that test to the fact that they can very simply do testing of their environment when necessary. And it's a very important part of ensuring the security of your environment by being able to deliver that compliance reporting and testing your environment. Now, what I want to do is just to quickly cover a case study. So Centura Health, they're a nonprofit and 17 hospitals in Colorado and Kansas. And they have about 100 plus physician and practices and 20,000 employees. And so they have now deployed Zerto, and in just 1 year, they are now protecting 1,500 of their mission-critical VMs. And as you can see, their Tier 1 apps, including Epic data. And so they're now seeing significant cost savings by being able to eliminate some of the other multiple tools that they're using, like they're using SRM and TSM, so some of the licensing costs and reduced storage requirements. Because when you think about it, our platform is really converging the DR and the disaster recovery, backup, and cloud mobility in one platform. They also have used us because they were moving to a new colo facility, so they use Zerto for their migration project, and they're also using us for their primary backup, as you can see here, that holds the compliance data. And then they've got a future vision too. They're starting to look at using Zerto to leverage cloud as their DR site and target, and they're expanding the functionality. They're looking at how they can actually leverage Zerto to deliver some of the operational services around patch testing and application update testing. So they started with one aspect and moving to many other sort of use cases that Zerto does. And talking of the use cases, you can see here, we have one platform that can help you modernize and secure your IT, from disaster recovery, operational recovery, long-term retention, those unplanned disruptions to your business, to the good disruptions that drive growth and help with the modernization around moving to cloud, operational services. And you can see the list of the use cases that you see here. So I'll leave you just a couple of thoughts in the sense of why Zerto. When you think about the business outcome to your healthcare organization, it's really threefold. One is about continuous availability, which is absolutely critical. And I should have really put here to say fully protected to deliver always on customer experience, but always on patient care. Because if you can deliver that continuous availability to your healthcare organization, you're not worrying about downtime and the impact to your patients. And then second too is about operational efficiency, because what you can do is to be able to streamline your resources so that you can accelerate the initiatives around modernization or the digital initiatives that you may have on your plate as well. And then as you're looking at cloud, the ability to be able to move your workloads to, from, and also between public and private clouds, on-premises, public, private, your choice, your way. And then for those of you who are not familiar with Zerto, just a little bit about who we are. And on the right-hand side, I just put some examples of some of the customers that we actually have. We have much more than this, but these are just some of the examples. We've been around since 2009. We now have 8,000 customers across 75 countries, across a lot of industries, but healthcare is a growing industry for us and one of the top industries that we have. And we have over 1,500 partners, whether that's resellers and VARs, but also we have, if you're thinking about maybe a managed service provider to help modernize your infrastructure and do it that way, we have over 450 plus global managed service providers. And we have integration with strategic vendors like Microsoft and HP and IBM, because these are strategic vendors that you're using to ensure that you're driving your business forward. And so just lastly, if you'd like to know more, we have our user conference coming up, and we have a special webinar promotion with 30% off here, and I've just put the code. It's going to be held in sunny Hollywood, Florida. And actually, you see on the bottom left the picture of Kevin Mitnick, and he is going to be our guest speaker, so it's quite interesting considering the discussion that we've actually had, and he'll be doing some live demonstrations around hacking and so forth. So it promises to be an excellent event, but we have detailed sessions with regards to how we can help you from ransomware to moving to cloud to protecting your business. So we hope to see you there. And so with that, I'd like to thank you for your time and pass it back.
Very good. Thanks, Caroline. I have a couple of great questions here I'd love to talk through, if that's all right with you.
Yes, of course.
So first one is specifically with regard to backup. So Zerto is very well known for replication and availability, but this person is mentioning that when they looked last, they were hoping to also solve some backup problems, and that wasn't an option. I know that's kind of changed. So can you talk a little bit about specifically retention sort of things and how Zerto helps with some of those?
Yes, of course. And you're right. I mean, that's where we introduced hypervisor-based replication. So we've always had our journal, which is 30 days. And so we've been supporting backup use cases from a short-term retention. Last year with Zerto 7, we introduced long-term retention capabilities, so we like index and search, and the ability to support secondary storage targets like HP Store Once, NFS, SMB, so that you can, for compliance, be able to store your data for however long that you actually want. So now you can recover from within seconds back to years. So you can determine within the environment whether how long you're keeping your data for from a short-term perspective for fast recovery, and then when you're ready to sort of hand it off for that long-term data retention. And we introduced a new concept, which was what we called the Elastic Journal, which is really the merging of the long-term data retention repositories with the short-term journal. So it's absolutely transparent to you, and we do all of the management around that. So absolutely, and we're seeing customers, and I mentioned Centura, they're using us for backup, and they actually replace their Tivoli backup tool with Zerto. So we're seeing more of that. I hope that answers the question.
It does. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds to me like it doesn't look exactly like maybe your existing backup products look like, but you get the results you're after, and maybe in some ways it's better.
You're absolutely right. Well, in my opinion, not the fact that I'm biased, but we are better. Think of it as the modern approach. Continuous is the new backup. And so when you look at the combination of the replication and our journaling technology, which is very unique, it does make it very unique in the market, and I think the future. I think the challenge that you've got with backups, you've still got that sort of period. It's periodic backup. It's taking snapshots. It has impacts to your production environment, whereas we don't, because we replicate. You have a replica version over here, and then we're just sending the block level changes over on a continuous in a continuous way. So you're always going to be based upon what your settings are. You can recover from within 5 seconds.
Well, let's dig into that just a little bit, because actually we had a question specifically about the kind of protection schedule. You say continuous. The question was basically, is it continuous based on a schedule, or continuous based on when it sees that data has changed, it replicates that?
Yeah, it's based on the change. So it'll replicate across only the changes, block level changes. Yes. So it's not a scheduler.
Okay.
It'll do it continuous.
Got it. Okay. And last question here. Exactly how does one go about licensing Zerto? I don't think I heard that.
Yeah, we have one license, but we can do a perpetual license, or the fact that we can do subscription. And I think too, instead of what you will find is a lot of the capabilities from other vendors tend to, you have a separate SKU, another SKU, or this is an add-on and that's an add-on. Once you've actually acquired the platform, deployed the platform, you have all of the capabilities. So say, for example, you're moving to Azure today and you want to go to AWS. There's no additional charge there. It's part and parcel of the platform. And it's not having to pay for an additional piece for the analytics. It's part and parcel of the platform. The orchestration tool is part of the platform too. So we have all of that capability. So it's one SKU, one platform, and perpetual or subscription.
Very good. All right. Well, that's all we've got time for. Thanks so much, Caroline, for being on the EcoCast today.
Oh, and thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Okay. We're going to move on quickly. We've got, just to remind everybody, since I was asked about it a few minutes ago, there are 2 drawings today for some laptops. We're going to be doing one of those after we're done with Duo here, and then another one at the very end after Nutanix, just so you know. Also, just a reminder to keep asking your questions in the Q&A panel as you have them. Those are leading to some very interesting discussion as we get to the end of each presentation. I really appreciate having your input on what we dig into, so don't forget to do that as we go. With that, I'm going to introduce Zoe Lindsay from Duo. Zoe's a security strategist. Zoe, are you there?
I am. Hello.
Welcome, welcome. Please go ahead and take it away.
Excellent. Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining. It sounds like we're going to have some folks that are more actively tuning in because we've got a prize giveaway after this one. So I'm very excited about that, and let's go ahead and dive in. So today we're going to be talking about a zero trust treatment plan for healthcare. And what we're going to be talking about is zero trust in the context of secure access. So we're going to talk a little bit about what zero trust is and is not, how you can apply this methodology to your access security strategy, as well as feedback on how Duo has gone about trying to provide this to folks. So what is the reason why we're seeing folks talk about zero trust so much, especially in these last few years? I think fundamentally it's because we've seen that our networks have changed. We don't see so much a exclusively perimeterized network anymore where all administrative tools, directory services, productivity services, and workstations live within a hardened perimeter that you're protecting with a firewall, a NAC, what have you. Rather, we are seeing environments that look a lot more like this, where not only do we have our core environment, but now we have both laptop and mobile devices that are connecting through remote access services, and then the growth and explosion really of cloud and hybrid-based services, not only for productivity services for users who got used to having that in the consumer space and wanted the same flexibility at work, but increasingly for the tools that we rely on to have our day-to-day business operational. More and more we're seeing those identity and directory services, productivity suites, administrative and even security tools moving to a scalable SaaS or hybrid model. So we've got well-established solutions on how to address sort of this traditional network, but it's become a growing question how to address this expanded network that includes a lot more than our traditional resources. And that is why we've seen this discussion of zero trust expand. Because the truth is, as we've seen our networks change, we've also seen the methods or the focus of attacks change. It is less often now that we see attacks that are focused primarily on systems and networks, where the goal was to get past that hard, crunchy outside to the soft, gooey inside, where you could then easily pivot. Increasingly, as more of these services have moved outside the direct network, it's become more practical for attackers to go straight for the data by exploiting identity through the tried, true, tested and reliable methods of phishing to compromise credentials, and ransomware to less focused on establishing a foothold in the system, but rather moving directly to holding that data hostage. And this is something that I think the healthcare space knows all too well. This is actually not even the newest data, but over 100 million healthcare records were compromised. Patient data is considered even more valuable than fulls or full credit profiles that include both credit card numbers and financial information. And as we've seen actual teeth added to fines for data breaches, mandatory disclosure, and patient record theft, it's been a growing concern. We had over 750 incidents in 2018. And I think that we're seeing similar patterns as we see in the industry at large, that privilege misuse, weak, stolen, or lost credentials, and crimeware, which could be ransomware, as well as crypto mining software, which has been a growing space, are also a consideration. So we all know sort of what some of the challenges are. We have the expanding perimeter that we've talked about, the expanding use of Internet of Things technologies, which increasingly is just becoming more Internet technologies as these become indistinguishable from other devices that we're using and increasingly move from sort of fringe benefits to core services. For example, managing HVAC systems with environmental sensors. As well as end users and consumers that are more tech savvy and want wider support across all of their devices, and the existing and growing compliance requirements that we see. So if we take a look, we can see that malware remains a leading source of attacks in the healthcare space. But if we go to the root cause, I promise those early slides were as close as we're going to get to FUD during this whole presentation, because I think it's important to realistically assess what the situation is. But I really want to focus on not why we should feel hopeless, but rather, the steps that we are able to take. The truth is, these main factors have not changed and haven't changed for decades. When we look at the common elements between breaches, not only within healthcare, but across all industries, year after year, the leading factors are identity theft, lost stolen credentials, and compromised devices. So that means that if we want to reduce our risk, we can start by figuring out how we stop attacks that use stolen but legitimate credentials, and how do you prevent devices that are at higher risk of compromise, which we can refer to as poor security hygiene, from accessing those critical applications. And this is really one of the central problems that the Zero Trust model was built to address. The Zero Trust model has been described or encapsulated a number of different ways since its introduction back in 2010 through John Kinderbog's paper. You can look at it as treating all connections as untrusted until proven otherwise. We have said that Zero Trust is establishing on-the-spot trust every time a resource is accessed. But really what it gets down to the point of is you no longer treat users that are inside of your environment or outside of your environment differently, rather than thinking of managing your access strategy for your local resources and then on a case-by-case basis, your hybrid or cloud resources. Instead, we are looking at the highest risk connections, those external connections where we do not have any of the visibility and controls of our local network, and we're applying that standard to all connections. If we apply the strictest standard and build a solution that allows us to have granular policy but meet that standard universally, then we're going to be better positioned whether a user is coming from inside or outside. So what does Duo do? We are securing access for any user using any device connecting to any application. That starts with users. Multi-factor authentication is a well-established standard. It's been proven to be one of the most cost-effective standards for reducing risk of account compromise and theft. We're validating who the user is, what group they belong to, and whether they can validate not only with the password, but with a strong second factor, or in many cases, multiple factors. But additionally, there are other elements in that connection, right? They are not just a user organically accessing this information. They are connecting to that resource through a device, a laptop, a desktop, or a mobile device. And ideally, if they're doing an out-of-band authentication, they are authenticating on a different device. So if we want to better assess the risk of that connection, we need to establish whether we have a reasonable sense of whether those devices can be trusted or not. So we are saying what device is it, who owns it, and what is its security hygiene. Finally, not every tool is the same, and so we need to take into account the resource that is being accessed. How critical is it? That can affect the balance of security and convenience. We may need to add additional layers of security to our highest value resources, while we can streamline access while still maintaining our security position for those resources that are less privileged. So because we have limited time today, I'm not going to go through a live demo of the authentication experience. We do have a 1-minute demo on our site, as well as a longer session that goes through all of the enrollment experience that you can access afterwards. But this is the base user experience. A user goes to log in. In almost all cases, that primary login experience does not change. But after primary authentication, they are going to receive an authentication request, most commonly to a mobile device, although we do support other factor options that you'll see in just a moment. And then they have access to their protected application, including industry key applications like Epic and Imprivata. In addition to push and soft token on smart devices, we do support telephony methods, SMS and phone callback, U2F, the newer web-based standard championed by the FIDO Alliance, as well as wearables, biometric factors on supported devices like Face ID, Touch ID, and fingerprint scanners on Android. And for those edge cases where there's not an alternative, we are also able to support hardware tokens. So the multi-factor element of this is fairly straightforward. You prompt the user for how you want to have them authenticate and add an additional step using a separate factor rather than just something that they know, instead something that they have or something that they are, to do a stronger validation of that user. But when we start to talk about the device, we want to consider what we are classifying under that heading of security hygiene. And for us, it was a priority to make sure that there was not an additional infrastructure roadblock in gathering this information. That is, we didn't want you to have to deploy an agent to devices and thereby require additional steps for a user to be compliant. Instead, we are leveraging the information that is already available. On a mobile device, a tablet or a phone, we are using the default permissions available to any app on a user's device when they install Duo Mobile. There is some basic information that any installed app on a user's device is going to provide. That is OS version, whether it's rooted or jailbroken, whether it's up to date, etc. On laptops and desktops, we are using, for any web-based integration, we are using the user agent in the browser, the existing user agent in the browser. And for deeper analysis on laptops and desktops, we have a user installable device health application that you can use as well. Along with doing that analysis and allowing you to set policy that we'll take a look at in just a moment, we also have self-remediation tools for users. So the goal here is, rather than being a roadblock, to help enable security. We know that doctors and lawyers are some of the hardest users to keep happy, and it's understandable because it can literally be a matter of life and death to add seconds to their processes. So instead of having that user unable to authenticate and have to submit a help desk ticket and have downtime until an update can be done, if it is something that a user can remediate themselves, we provide that information right in line so that they can go and make that change, as well as giving you the ability to give them a grace period so they can do that update later. So when we're talking about security posture, we're considering, is it managed? Is it corporate managed or user owned? Is it running an up-to-date version of the OS? We know that most at-scale attacks are not O-days. They are not brand new exploits affecting current versions of the OS. In most cases, they are attacks or exploits for which a patch has already been released, because those are the affordable exploits to do at scale, which means that you can greatly reduce the risk just by making sure that those devices are on a current and up-to-date version of the OS. Is the disk encrypted? Has it been protected with a passcode or biometric? Is firewall enabled, etc. So here is an example of what this may look like in practice. So we worked with a hospital system, Centura Health, that had been a multi-factor user for some time. And then they when we introduced this device analysis several years ago, initially they were not interested. They said that they had MDM already in place and it covered all of their issued devices. And they were correct for all internal applications, for everything that they had full direct access control over, it was limited to managed devices. However, for hosted services, external services that had a direct login, we decided, they wanted to do a pilot and just get a temperature check of the full environment, and found nearly as many devices accessing services that fell under their security purview as they had in their managed service, and almost half of those devices were not compliant with their security standard. So the advantage here is, by virtue of being the second factor, being the last doorway that users have to go through before they're able to access a service, we are able to make sure that that check is done every single time, every single device. And we get the feedback from end users as well, because you can't just consider the security effectiveness of a tool, because a perfect tool that a user can't understand is no useful tool at all. So we've also tried to focus not only on making sure that we're providing an up-to-date security tool for administrators, but also to make sure that it is something that end users are able to understand and seamlessly work with. I won't play it for you, but if you check out these slides afterwards, there's a link on this slide to an actual voicemail that a IT admin from the hospital sent to us. He saved the voicemail message and sent it to Duo because he said it was the first time in nearly 20 years in healthcare IT that a doctor had called to say thank you. So that's about as good an endorsement, I think, as we could ask for. So when we talk about zero trust as applied to access, what does that look like, right? Because it would be great if every time there was a new approach or new philosophy that we could pull everything out of our environment and start over, but realistically we can't. So if we need to consider logical or incremental steps moving towards zero trust access, the baseline is confirming user identities with a strong second factor. If there's nothing else you take away from this conversation today, and you're not using MFA everywhere, not just where it is HIPAA mandated, I would urge you as strongly as possible to prioritize doing that. But after that, we need to gain the wider access visibility on the devices in use, the network connected through, and the application that is being connected to. Once you have that visibility, you need to ensure device security by having some way to enforce policy. So once we can see what is happening, we need to have some way to influence or make a decision whether or not to grant access. And then once you have that baseline policy, as mentioned, not all tools are the same, not all users are the same. And so what you would be able to do then is build out more granular policies, not only a global default policy, but also application specific, to step up or step down as needed, as well as group specific. A common example that I use for this is you can lock down your North American VPN to only be accessible to users in the North American region. But if you have a Active Directory group for your traveling DR team, they may need to have access to that VPN anywhere in the world. And so you'd be able to make a group-based policy that would allow them to log in with multi-factor internationally, but no one else. Once you have all of that baseline, so you've established a strong multi-factor, you've built a comprehensive device inventory, you've established policies and made granular policies for different use cases, this positions you well to more and more rapidly secure access to all applications. As every time you do a subsequent integration, you've completed more of the potential groundwork in previous integrations that you can then just kind of drop in Lego style. So in addition to deploying identity and access management for your users with multi-factor, that is not the whole of identity and access management. And I try to stress here that we are not selling you, Duo or Cisco at large is not selling you Duo Trust. If somebody tells you that they have the Zero Trust product or your single Zero Trust solution, I would run in the opposite direction. Zero Trust is a methodology. It can be applied to nearly any aspect of your security strategy. And so I want to emphasize that when I'm talking about Duo's Zero Trust toolbox, we are talking about applying a Zero Trust mindset to access security. If we pull that scope back to look at identity and access management as a whole, Duo doesn't cover every single base there, but we're a key element of that strategy. And within the family here, we have other elements, the identity services engine for identity and access management, or if you want to take a look at another customer deployment here, we can look at Centara, who uses Duo with the wider Cisco suite in their environment and has for some time. So they're using ICE to be able to see where everything's coming into their network and add additional context, whereas Duo is getting a sort of pulse check at the moment of authentication. So these tools play side by side where you're getting both the on-the-spot and universal check as well as the deeper analysis and persistent information for those connections, those resources that you have more direct control over. And I think that brings us to Q&A.
Fantastic. We've got a few interesting things to go over here. So first of all, I thought this would come up. Is there a trial version or some way to get your hands on this and see a little bit more if this presentation piqued your interest?
Yes, and I have a two-part answer to that, and half of it you didn't ask for, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Yes, you can go to, I believe it's signup.duo.com, and you get access to a fully featured 30-day trial for up to 10 users. After 30 days, you can continue to use the free version of the service, which is basically the base MFA service for up to 10 users. And then we have pricing information, baseline pricing information right on the site, especially for folks that are dialing in. I'm sure that most of you are dealing with huge environments with lots and lots and lots of users. And so I would encourage you when you get to the pricing piece of the conversation to reach out, because definitely that will scale based on volume. But the other half of that is don't discount the docs and demo pages on the Duo site. If you don't have the resources to start a full-scale pilot, it's okay. If you go to demo.duo.com, you can see live integrations that you can go through and authenticate to as a user, as well as a model version of our admin panel. And our docs page, duo.com/docs, that has documentation for every native and general purpose integration that we provide. None of it is, walled behind a sign up or requires you to set up a trial. So if you're just trying to get an idea of scope of work or just need to show your leadership what this looks like to get the buy-in so that you can start a pilot, those are some great resources too.
Excellent. Okay. I'm not familiar enough with this space to know what this means, but I'm sure you will. Christopher is asking, does Duo authentication handle tap and go?
I believe that is going to be for smart card authentication, and I would say it's going to be dependent. Yeah, it's going to be dependent, so that would be a follow-up conversation, but we can definitely get some information if you want to either pass along their info, we can follow up direct, or they can send us a message.
Okay. Lisa would like to know, can you change the device you're using for your secondary piece of authorization after you initially set one up? Or I guess a different question would be, could you have multiple?
Yes and yes. So in most cases, we have the ability to enable a self-service portal. This is extending that self-remediation idea. This does require that the user complete a multi-factor authentication before they can reach that menu. So a common example that we see is somebody has a smartphone. They have an iPhone, and they're using push. They go and get a new iPhone. So they have the same phone number, and if you as an administrator have enabled a phone callback or SMS, they can still use those factors, but they won't be able to use push until they reactivate it, because the push credential is a private key certificate that's generated on the user's device, stored in the HSM, and is not transferable by design. We want that to stay secret and secure. So you can have the self-service portal where users can make changes to existing devices. For example, they can reactivate Duo Mobile, they can nickname a device, or they can set a device as default. And if you couldn't guess from me saying you can set a device as default, in that portal you can also enroll multiple devices. As long as it fits for your security strategy, we actually encourage that, to let your users know to enroll a backup device. Because we have two scenarios. I leave my phone behind at home. If I have no backup device, I have no way to get online, and I'm now contacting our help desk, probably through phone callback or by email, which means that now the security of my access attempt has fallen back to the difficulty of a social engineering attack. Whereas if I have a YubiKey sitting on my keychain and I leave my phone at home, I can still log in. I have no downtime, and we're not compromising the security of that solution. So to get back to the original question, if you wanted to make changes to a device after you already added it, the easiest way to do that would be as if you enabled the self-service portal, but also administrators can send a conditional enrollment link to users to make changes.
Okay, that makes sense. I think we have time for one more. So from the content of this person's question, it seems like their employees in their organization are bringing their own devices, but they believe they would be resistant to installing some sort of app that the company dictates they must install on their phone. Would you just give them like a hardware token, or is there another way to handle that?
Yeah, and this is a concern that we run into a lot, and the first sort of way to respond to it that we recommend is education. A lot of times the initial sort of gut reaction to, I don't want to install this thing on my phone, is that users are afraid. They're afraid they're giving up privacy on their device, that they're giving up control of their device, that it could be wiped and they're going to lose all their pictures, or that it's going to mess up how their phone operates. So usually when we communicate to users, hey, this gathers no more information than your Foursquare app or your mobile game. We are only collecting the anonymous device level information that's available to any app on your phone, and we're doing it so that you can more easily authenticate. That addresses a lot of the concern in practice, and there's also sort of a ongoing impact where, as users see other people using push and see how easy it is, the percentage of users that opt for push grows. But across all of our deployments, across all our customers, the average of users with a push credential enabled is over 90%. So really, just by focusing on making the experience less of a headache and more positive for users, we addressed a lot of that. But for users that steadfastly say, absolutely not, you're not putting anything on my phone, no way, never, yes, you can use a hardware token. Yes, you can use a telephony-based option, a phone callback or SMS to a corporate issue device or like a doctor's beeper. Additionally, you can leverage some of the newer options like a YubiKey or a U2F token. There's even NFC models so that for options that do not have an accessible USB port. And on newer machines that support WebAuth and authentication like Touch ID on Mac, you are able to also support those devices for direct integration.
Got it. I imagine the social pressure of watching all your coworkers just log in instantly while you have to wait for a text message is enough to push people to do it.
Right, exactly. Yep.
Okay, well, that's all we've got time for today. Thanks so much, Zoe, for being on the EcoCast today. It's great to have you.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break before we move on to give away our first prize for today. So we're giving away a Surface Pro, the details of which you can see on the event landing page. The winner of the first Surface Pro is Greg Maynard from California. Greg Maynard from California. Congratulations, Greg. We'll be in touch via email to get the delivery of that prize set up for you. And thanks to Greg and everybody for being on the event today. With that, I'm going to move on and introduce Nick Hernandez from Clumio. Nick, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Awesome. Yep, we hear you. Nick is a Cloud SE at Clumio, and I want to flip it to Nick and hear what you've got for us today.
Cool. Thanks, James. Hey, everybody. Like James is saying, I'm Nick Hernandez. I'm a cloud sales engineer over here at Clumio. Clumio is a just over 2.5-year-old Santa Clara-based company. We have a focus on providing customers with SaaS-based data protection and security. Our customers don't have to procure or set up any hardware or software to start protecting their data. They simply have to register with Clumio. They have to pay us first, of course, and then they can create backup policies and assign it to any of the data sources that they have in their data centers, in their public cloud providers, or even the SaaS offerings. We can literally have customers up and running and protecting their data within about 15 minutes. We're off to a really great start. In 2019, we won an award at VMworld, which was for the best in show, which pitted us against all the other vendors that were at the show. And that was a really remarkable thing for us to win so early on in our journey here. We're also pretty consistently mentioned in the trade news as one of the companies to watch coming out of the Silicon Valley when it comes to data protection and data security. The majority of the customers that I get to talk to as an SC have a mandate to get to the cloud somehow. That sounds like it should be pretty simple, but the reality is it can be quite a journey to get there. There's a lot of successes, there's a lot of failures, but nonetheless, the customers do push on to get to the cloud, maybe altering their journey as they move along because there's just too many business advantages by going to the cloud. If you look at the applications customers that would like to move to the cloud, there's a whole ton of corporate applications and even business-facing applications that they want to move out and take advantage of what the cloud has to offer. If you look at the SaaS offerings out there, it's pretty easy for corporations to offload a lot of their service desk, their HR applications, their back office, things like email, or their sales-facing applications to a SaaS model. We're even starting to see data warehousing move into a SaaS model. And if you look at what Workday and ServiceNow and Office 365 and Salesforce have been able to accomplish in terms of taking up a bunch of market share, it's a testament to the value that these companies are bringing to their customers. Even things that we thought would never move to a SaaS model, like the big iron Exadatas of the world or Teradata's, our sister company Snowflake has been able to turn that into an as-a-service model for a bunch of customers. And if you watch the trade magazines and the websites, you'd see that they recently had a $12 billion valuation, which just shows the power that SaaS brings to the market. And what we intend to do at Clumio is be the data protection portion of the SaaS offerings and bring a ton of value to customers that are looking to offload even their data protection to a software as a service strategy or mode. For applications that customers were unable to lift and shift to the cloud, to move to SaaSify, as we put it, they did a lift and shift to the cloud. What that typically meant was they took virtual machines or physical servers and databases and turned those into machines up in the cloud, utilizing data storage out of the cloud providers. And there was a great deal of success with that, but there was also significant failures with that model. Maybe applications technically couldn't be moved in their entirety to the cloud, or there was some cost issues that came up because of the amount of storage, the amount of compute that they ended up running in the cloud. So what happened to a good portion of those applications is they were repatriated or moved back into the customer data center. That still didn't stop customers from having a mandate or desire to go to the cloud. There's just there's too many business advantages to going to the cloud around elasticity and scalability and global presence of all of these cloud vendors. So they kind of marched on, but they took a different approach. They started looking at new applications that they were building for their business. That gave them an opportunity to look at different types of services in the cloud that were a little bit more technical feasible for their application builds, and also play with the economics of moving these applications to the cloud. So, serverless services out at the cloud, containers, different types of data storage, even database as a service or data warehousing that was kind of unlimited in scalability was a direction that they had. They learned a ton. They figured out the economics of the cloud, and that gave them the chance to actually move a lot of the applications that were previously moved back into the data center and optimize those for utilizing the cloud services as well. Applications that were sitting in development still could be completely pushed into production on a lot of those cloud native services. So this is what we're seeing out there as we talk to customers. It is a journey, and it's a good chance for you guys to take a look at this slide and figure out where you are on this journey. I'm sure you're in some route to the cloud today. What we found is that along this journey that these customers are on, when we go in and talk about data security and data protection, they now have a whole bunch of data sets that are fragmented across all of those cloud services that I mentioned on the previous slide. Managing data protection across SaaS and multiple public clouds, plus data still on premise, brought a lot of infrastructure complexity to them. Not to mention that they're typically managing, tens, if not hundreds. We have customers that have thousands of cloud accounts for SaaS applications and public cloud vendors that they're utilizing. And to be able to manage and protect all of those different data sets is immensely complex for them. If anything was used at all from a data protection and security standpoint, customers started utilizing something like Snapshot, which is a pretty good way to protect your data, but it still doesn't prevent bad actors from entering into your accounts or into your on-premise data centers or fat finger events from corrupting your data sources. And with today's ransomware attacks we frequently hear about, there's a good chance that even your backup copies of your data have been ransomed. So there's a lot of initiatives out there on how do we get around a lot of these data vulnerabilities, and we fill some of those gaps, as I'll continue to tell you here. For some customers that were using snapshots, they also wanted to bring in and try to deploy their current backup solutions into the cloud. Kind of a lift and shift model similar to what I mentioned in the earlier slide. What they found is running those applications or those hyper-converged architectures in the cloud became quite expensive. And they found themselves having to maintain a lot of cloud components and even build lifecycle management around the data sets that they were protecting, which was an enormous problem for them. The other thing to take into consideration as you're trying to move your backup products into the cloud is, are you going to be faced with any charges around moving data between accounts from the cloud back to your data center? And what we found is a lot of customers really got scared off from a lot of the egress charges when they needed to get data moved around and back to their on-site data centers. As well, now that you have all of these fragmented data sources, hitting the mark as far as security and compliance goes is very difficult. Data is fragmented all over the place. There's no single pane of glass to have line of sight to all of these data sources. And that's an area that we've also put quite a bit of focus is not just data protection of all of these cloud data sources and on-prem data sources, but also giving you a line of sight to know what data resides where and what type of data resides in those locations. So let's talk for a minute here about a customer that we're actually helping today in the healthcare vertical. we have a customer and a partner, I should say, in St. Charles Health System. They were facing a few different things when they came to us and asked us to do a proof of concept with them. The first one was that they have a CIO mandate to actually look at SaaS applications for any new apps that are coming in-house. Beyond that, they're also looking for SaaS play for any maintenance renewal applications or infrastructures that they had coming up. They also have a security officer in-house that said, hey, we want any data that is going to be retained for long-term compliance. We want that data to be indexed and cataloged because we want to be ready for any upcoming audits that might hit, for example, a PHI audit or a PI audit. They also had some technical challenges. There's backup headache. Every time they had to do a renewal, they were forced with upgrading hardware and software. They were moving data around from platform to platform as they were renewing these infrastructures, and that was something they were having to do every few years. It became a big, big headache for them. They were also forced to look at how bandwidth is utilized to move data around between their data centers and from their core network out to the cloud. So when they were looking at a SaaS model and they're looking at offloading data to the cloud, they wanted to make sure that they had a vendor, a SaaS provider that had some efficiencies around data network utilization. So why did they end up choosing Clumio? Well, first and foremost, we're kind of a set it and forget it type of technology. You're up and running in about 15 minutes. You build the backup policies and you're off into the races as far as data protection goes. There's no more 3-year, forklift upgrades. There's no hardware to be renewed. You just simply keep renewing your subscription with us. And if new data sources come in and new data sets need to be protected, we just expand your licensing to also include those new data sources. They're automatically added into your protection policies. And then we have some technologies that actually take advantage of the network that is available. So when we do backups, we do deduplication and compression, and we also encrypt the data before it's sent out. So when we do a backup, we only truly send data out that is unique in form to minimize the amount of bandwidth that's utilized for backups. Beyond that, we also have the ability to throttle the amount of bandwidth that's utilized by our service. So you can set low thresholds and we'll never consume any more than that during the backup windows. And then another concern they had that we were able to solve is, what is it like to recover from the cloud? Say I have some virtual machines, say I have some email that needs to be recovered. How fast can you actually get that back? Well, we also have a technology called rapid recovery, where not only are we sending back dedupe and compressed information, we're also only sending the required data to make the data on site or in your cloud account good again. So if it was corrupted, we just replace the corrupted data. A comment they made about that technology is we're actually faster in many cases for recovery of data than even what they were utilizing in their on-site, on-prem backup infrastructure. So we're happy that St. Charles is a great partner of us. They're also helping us with a bunch of upcoming features. So we thank them for their support and their partnership, and we're really glad that we can solve a lot of these problems for them. So a lot of our customers are faced with looking at all different types of data out there. So our customers only ever have to look at one single pane of glass for any of the fragmented data sources they have out there. So every customer has an account where all the data is backed up to. It's a single account. We back up the data, we index it, we catalog it, and we secure it for them. It doesn't matter if that data is VMware, on-prem, VMware up at AWS. It could be native AWS services like EBS, or even SaaS applications like Office 365. We also offer a completely air-gapped protection service. This is just simply how we've built the product from day one. If you think about the way you're protecting your data today, a typical approach is to make point-in-time copies of your production volumes. Typically, those are maintained within the same data center or within the same cloud account. They're kind of like a single point of failure for a lot of our customers. If a ransomware attack was ever to hit your data center or even one of your cloud accounts, your point-in-time copies of your production data are susceptible also to ransom. And there's been plenty of stories out there in industry where your point-in-time copies or your backup data has also been ransomed. And as custodians of data, we need to make sure that you are able to get to the data when you need to, and actually to be able to move that data to a new location so that you can avoid paying that ransom that's come down on your organization. If you look at the way Clumio handles our backups, we create a read-only copy of your production. We dedupe, compress, and encrypt that data, and then we send it out over a secure connection to your air-gapped account up at Clumio. There's no single point of failure. When the data lands on the Clumio side in your account, it's 100% air-gapped, it's encrypted on the back end, and even where it resides in object store on the back end, it's a completely immutable file that could never be overwritten. It's virtually impossible for a bad actor or ransomware to have access into your data at Clumio. Not only do we take being secure very seriously, we also want to make sure that we're adhering to and achieving all of the compliance certifications that the different industry verticals require. In 2019, we achieved our ISO 27001, we achieved our SOC 2 Type 1, and important for the healthcare industry is we achieved HIPAA compliance. In the coming months, we'll actually also achieve HITRUST, and we're en route to getting our FedRAMP Moderate Ready certification as well for customers that federal customers that want to start utilizing Clumio as a service. Beyond all of the nice certificates and the security posture we have, we also, of our own accord, go under quarterly penetration testing via third-party consulting firms to make sure, as we add different services in, we continue to offer a very secure model and build on the back end. Internally, all of our employees also go through quarterly compliance training and testing just to make sure that we're also adhering to all the best practices according to these industry standards. Another great thing about Clumio is that we're from day one we're built with 100% cloud native services. What that means to our customers is if we're using highly scalable components like Lambda and S3 storage on the back end, when a customer suddenly wants to go from 10 data sources to thousands of data sources, or we onboard 100 customers in a day, we can easily expand the service on the back end. The scalability is already there, just native out of the cloud services that we utilize today. Because all of the components we utilize are also microservices, we can easily update each and every one of those components on a weekly basis without any type of service interruption to our customers. So every Wednesday we'll do a push to improve the service on the back end. Sometimes there's a customer-facing feature that gets released. That is 100% transparent to our customers. Backups can continue on while we're doing those types of maintenance. Because we have all those microservices running on the back end, we're also able to proactively monitor each and every component on the back end, which means via our support team, we can also proactively support the customers when issues arise. Most of the issues that arise, we're able to proactively remediate. The only time that we reach out to a customer is when something needs to be remediated on the customer side. And even at that, we'll 9 times out of 10 tell the customer exactly what needs to be remediated and why in order to get their backups back up and running. So we'll keep innovating with all of these cloud services. There's a whole bunch of new features that are quickly coming. These are some of the stats that we've been able to achieve via the SaaS model and the way we've built things on the back end. We're about 8 petabytes of logical data protected on the back end for all of our customers. We have a 92% success rate for our backups. And in the last 5 months, we've transparently, with no disruption to our customers, updated our solution to have 21 new features. And then 68% of our cases are actually opened up by our support team, which is a global support team and customers never have to worry about, hey, something went wrong today. Nobody's reached out to me. What do I need to do to remediate these backups? 68% of the cases are literally opened up by our team. So at Clumio, we're here to relieve your backup pains via a 100% SaaS model. The product is very easy to manage. There's no infrastructure for our customers to design, maintain, or upgrade. It's a single service for all of your applications, all of your data sources that reside out there in this multi-cloud, multi-service world. It can be set up in less than 15 minutes. Our cost structure is very predictable, so you're not having to predict how much data you're going to protect in a given year and then figure out how much data storage you need on the back end, or ask for a mid-year budget renewal or review so you can get a little bit more cash added for your data protection strategy. We charge per virtual machine, per volume type, per mailbox, regardless of what the backup policy looks like, regardless how long you're retaining that data on the back end. And there's no hidden charges either. We don't prevent you from doing a bunch of restorations, and there's no egress charges as you're moving data between Clumio and your cloud accounts, Clumio and your SaaS applications, or even Clumio back to your on-premise data centers. We can also very easily scale on demand, so you don't have to worry about sizing. You just tell us, hey, I'm going to add in 20 different virtual machines this week. As soon as you tag those with the new backup policy, those will intelligently start backing up on their own. And then always on security and compliance. From day one, we've taken this very seriously. We're great for ransomware and data loss protection. And it's a very simple solution to use from a security and compliance standpoint. You could literally create one policy that can be applied to all of your different data sources, and you no longer have to worry about the protection nor the security and compliance of all of your data sets. And with that, I thank you, and I'll turn it over to James for some Q&A.
Very good. Thanks, Nick. Good news and bad news. I have a whole pile of great questions here. I don't think we can even make it through them all, but I'm going to pick some of the really good ones. While we're still close to it, you had mentioned Office 365 once or twice. I've seen a couple of times people asking, do you support helping them back up Office 365?
Yeah, so that is a feature that is shortly going to go into early access and then GA in the April-May timeframe. We'll start with protecting Exchange Online, and then we'll quickly after that add in SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams for 365.
Okay. On the slide, maybe like 3 or 4 back, you said that there's a 92% success rate on backups. Now, anybody who's managed backups at all knows that that's astoundingly high. There's some curiosity about how is it so good? Like, why do your jobs succeed so much?
I think that's just a testament to the way the engineers have built the back end. There's not a lot of complexity to the solution. There's very little lift on the customer side. We basically deploy a lightweight connector. A connector could be as simple as like API calls into a SaaS application. It could be a VApp. That's the only thing that is required at the edge to transfer data out. The backups are actually being indexed and cataloged, and we're storing global deduplication all on the back end, and that's all stuff we're managing. So if there's a problem on that side, we'll remediate before a backup even fails from the customer's viewpoint. There's no hardware for a customer to manage. There's no media servers for customers to look through to figure out why the backups are failing. That's just all stuff that we built into our back end processes. That's why we can hit those types of success rates.
Very cool. Fun data point. You've got a big Clumio fan and customer in the audience today, and he says they're actually getting 98% success right now. 98.
Awesome.
I saw another question about should they be concerned about egress charges if you're restoring, say, from Clumio back to on-prem?
No, like I mentioned earlier, there's no charge for egress or moving data between your accounts or back to Clumio. That's all, through technology, we efficiently manage data transfer on the back end. And any type of cost like that is basically in the cost of the solution. So you pay per VM, you pay per mailbox, per volume type. You don't see any charges from anyone else but Clumio. We have customers that have no cloud presence at all, but they sign up to protect their on-prem VMware with us. And the only thing they ever see is a subscription for 100 VMs, 3,000 VMs, whatever the number might be.
Okay, just a couple more here for you. So David is asking a question about AWS accounts. In an organization of any size that's adopted cloud services, it's pretty normal to see that they have a whole bunch of different accounts, whether that's in AWS or Azure or whatever. He's asking, can they hook up all of those accounts and protect all of them?
Yeah, the really awesome thing about what we've built is the only thing that we need to do is get a connection and inventory any of your accounts. And so that process is just part of the service. And again, we give you line of sight through one single pane of glass to all of your AWS accounts. So we even have created opportunities and features where customers can see, we have customers that have 3,000 AWS accounts. They can literally back up from one account and do restorations into other accounts. So we give you data mobility and flexibility around how you manage all those accounts. Even file level recoveries, you can pull a file out of an EBS volume as an example from one account, and if it needs to go to another account, you just basically pull that file and download it into another account that's under your management. It's typical for customers to have like a QA test dev account, and before they move into production, they need to recreate all of those instances that are in QA test dev in production. We give them an opportunity to literally move the volumes from a backup copy into that new account so they can move into production really easily.
Okay. You showed a slide there and said that backup data was air-gapped, and I think the way that you put it was literally impossible for an attacker to get at some backup data. Can you talk just a little bit about how data is isolated and why you make that claim?
Yeah, so we don't maintain any protected data at the edge. That edge could be a customer's data center, it could be an AWS account, it could be their SaaS application. Once the data is deduped, compressed, and encrypted, it's securely transferred out to a customer's account at Clumio. At that point, there's no way for a customer or a bad actor to get access to their account. And then on the back end, when we're actually writing down the protected volumes or protected mail, whatever the data source may be, the data is also encrypted on the back end, and then it's stored in an immutable form. So even if somebody was somehow able to get to your account, the data is encrypted, so you need to figure out what encryption keys are being utilized, and then the files are actually immutable, so there's no way to actually overwrite those files on the back end. And that's what I meant by it's virtually impossible to get to a air-gap solution like Clumio from an edge source.
Got it. That is all the questions we've got time for. Thanks so much, Nick, for being on the EcoCast today.
Thank you.
And now it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Jeff Parker, Field CTO at Datrium. Jeff, thanks for being on. Take it away.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to it. So again, Jeff Parker, I'm the Field CTO at the company, as well as responsible for our healthcare go-to-market across the company. So today I'm going to talk to you about our perspective on modernizing and securing healthcare IT. So just to give you a little bit of information about us, so in the lower right is my background. So you can see I've worked for a number of private, public, and hybrid cloud-focused companies in terms of helping customers. I've also been in the healthcare space since about 1998. So I've got to work with a lot of organizations in that space since that time. A little bit about our founders. So on the bottom, Ganesh and Boris are two of the very early developers working on Minda Rosenblum's team at VMware, writing the Monitor, which is part of the ESX hypervisor. On the upper right, we see Hugo Patterson, who came to us out of NetApp. So he was the inventor of the snap and replicate with NetApp, and he is also a holder of 147 patents in the space that we operate. When we take a look at Brian and Suzala, who were founders and CTO of Data Domain, who were the kind of pioneers of deduplication as well as disk-based backup. So when you start to think about our ability to help customers in the space that we serve, it's a pretty interesting mix of characters that we brought forward. So from here, when I start to look at healthcare in general, the healthcare economy is huge and absolutely growing. So when I look at government spending, spending towards Medicare and Medicaid was 37% of the total spend from the government last year. If I go to the right-hand side of the page, we can see that from a U.S. economy perspective, 18% of the total economy or the gross domestic product was spent on healthcare. And then of note, we'll see in the middle that not only is it such a large percentage of our total economy, it's also growing at about 9% a year, which is huge. And then we start to take a look about demographics across the United States, for example, and we start to see that the aging population of 65 and up and 85 up is set to absolutely explode. So we're here in 2020, and if you look at those trends, we're going to have a lot more need for healthcare as we go forward. So the question is, how do we go ahead and serve this marketplace? So when we start to look at it, healthcare is continually forced to modernize. And when we start to talk about this, every CIO everywhere is really striving on how can they deliver on their key infrastructure required capabilities. And if we start to think about what those might be and what they might look like, the key attributes associated with these are things that you probably care about for your organization itself, right? So if you were issuing an RFP or looking for a new infrastructure to purchase, performance is certainly key, security, the ability to easily provision, operate, expand, and troubleshoot. Resilience is key in terms of its ability to present a high availability footprint. And then look, at times we know we have to do things like backup and recovery. So the ability to quickly go ahead and restore data or information is critical. And then in this day and age that we live in with ransomware, protection against ransomware and other crypto lockers is key, as well as the ability to have multi-site capabilities. So I'm going to talk through some of these things today. And when we start to think about not only do I need to deliver on these key infrastructure required capabilities, I need to do this while also achieving optimal value for each IT dollar spent. So when we think about why now and what that really means, hospitals are under constant budget constraints, right? So if we look at the number of hospitals that'll say they have the budgets that they desire, as well as the headcount that they're looking for, we in healthcare have had to learn how to do more with less, right? So, and then if I start to move from there, healthcare is also a really interesting market segment when we think about the whole concept of application performance. Because when we talk about our ability to go ahead and check somebody in to the emergency room or do admissions or go ahead and or order a clinical test or whatnot, the faster the application performance is actually ties directly to the number of patients served and the quality of the patient care that we provide. And then along those lines in the lower right, as we start to talk about this idea of infrastructure resiliency and disaster recovery, due to the marketplace and some of the security issues we're faced with today, the ability to have business continuity in place and quickly recover in case of problems, or if somebody tries to go ahead and execute a ransomware, the ability to go ahead and recover from that is absolutely critical. So when I think about healthcare IT, the thing I think about is how can we go ahead and make this vending machine simple, where somebody can get the containers or the VM guests that they're looking for in a very simple way at a very cost-effective way as well. And then we take a look at the ability to go ahead and have multi-site designs because, in the world of healthcare, it's not surprising to find that I've been to many hospitals over the years that have their data centers in the basement with water pipes running across servers, right? So this idea of having resiliency if a data center would go down and the ability to fail over is absolutely critical. So where it is that we focus, well, from our perspective, we believe you can't modernize a data center without you can't modernize the data center with the 5 different silos that most people are faced with today. So if we start to think about what those things are, in order to go ahead and deliver enterprise grade and healthcare grade data capabilities, I really need the ability to have primary, backup, security or encryption, DR, and then mobility of that data. The issue associated with that is that typically means 5 different products and 5 different silos. So when I look at it, these might be some of the vendors you, for example, might deal with. And you can see there's 5 different vendor sets that I have. And then if I look at the public cloud, there's web services. And I still need those same functions, but now instead of being products, they're actually web services that I'm buying. So now let's talk about if I need to go from site to site or site to cloud, The great challenge associated with this is I have to figure out how to move all these things in a synchronized fashion and maintain all the data integrity points between these different tools. That's a really hard thing to do. As a matter of fact, most people find that their data is landlocked and they're not able to do that. And if I want to go from cloud to cloud or cloud to premise or colo, same thing holds true, except instead of being landlocked, my data is cloud locked, right? So how do we address that? And when we talk about Datrium and our capabilities, what we bring to the table, we converge all 5 data functions into a unified data platform that we bring to market and bring to healthcare organizations everywhere. So if we start to look about delivering those 5 functions in one product, doing it on-prem, in the cloud, or a combination of the two, and do it in a seamless way where there is no difference between how I operate on-premise versus how I'd operate in the cloud. So if I know how to do it on one location, I know how to do it on the other. So going forward from there, when we start to talk about, how this comes into play, if you think about it, Datrium was built to help companies address their virtualized and containerized workloads and help those things to perform extremely well. In order to do that, right, it requires the servers that those are going to run on, and then from there it has the network it's going to connect them to get to my durable capacity or my storage layer. We don't have time to go into all the nuances in terms of what we do, but suffice it to say, we deliver software-defined converged infrastructure. So think about software-driven storage with the ability to go ahead and do it at a VM level or container level granularity, the ability to scale compute and storage independently to grow as you need to, and the ability to do zero RTO-based recoveries within the platform. So there's a lot here, and hopefully we'll have a chance at some other point where we can talk to you further about this. But going on from there, let me talk to you about some of the things we've been able to do. So one hospital I'm going to talk about that we've done a lot of work with is Northwest Community Hospital. They're located just outside Chicago, and they're a 480, 500-bed hospital. So they're in the top 5% of hospitals in terms of bed size across the United States. And when we look at that, they needed to do a Epic EHR system upgrade, right? So that was driving them to upgrade their infrastructure. While doing so, they also wanted to address their infrastructure resiliency and business continuity. One other thing that became very important for them is the ability to go ahead and have very fast RTOs. So as it currently stood, they were not able to meet their RTO objectives. So that was another piece they wanted to address. Now, when they went to Datrium, there's some really nice things that we were able to help them deliver. So whether it's faster application response time, massive reduction in Epic exception flags from an EHR perspective, 44% reduction in infrastructure costs, faster storage performance, or even if you look at the 97% faster RTO, that was absolutely huge for the organization. And as a matter of fact, Glenn Milan, who's their CIO at NCH, talked about us taking the time to understand their environment and actually come in at 1.5 million below other leading offerings that we have. So we not only saved them a significant amount of money, but we're also able to reduce the staff required to run that infrastructure, which is one of the things Glenn was so excited about. So one of the things you're going to see here is their Epic performance. And a key piece, and I'm not going to go through a lot of details here, but 1 in 98 clicks previously resulted in a greater than 5-second wait time. After deploying Datrium and the new infrastructure, it was 1 in 434 clicks. So what you're seeing is about a 78% improvement as a result of the performance of the Epic application in that environment. So let's talk about how this could be translated into what you and your organization are doing. So there's various different deployment patterns that we have. And when we talked about the idea of VMware and Kubernetes running on servers has to connect to the storage through a network, and whether you do it the way you're doing it today, or whether you do it the way Datrium helps you to do it, this is what I call your primary run infrastructure. So this might be the way you do it today. And Datrium, we offer a few new elements to it, right? So we offer an SSD flash cache to make things extremely fast. We have a durable capacity tier. We have built-in backup capabilities, et cetera. But nonetheless, when we start to talk about what that would look like, well, everybody everywhere needs to have a primary run infrastructure, right? A place to run those applications. But one of the things you're going to notice that is missing is, well, I need the ability to back that up. So many people not only want to do their primary run infrastructure, but they want to have local backup so they can recover. But then we start to talk about, well, what would be next from there? Well, from there is I not only have the ability to do local runtime and backup, but I often want to have an offsite copy. right? So if I need to recover something, if this were to go down, I have an offsite copy sitting there somewhere. And while that's all good, I can then recover from either my local copy or my remote copy. So this is a pattern that we see in the industry pretty regularly. But here's where NCH, Northwest Community Hospital, came into play. They had one hospital and then they had an offsite copy. But what happens if the primary data center goes down? Well, if I only have the offsite copy, but I have no infrastructure to run it on, I'm literally waiting for infrastructure to come back up and get in place. So what does that mean? Well, what we help them to do is have a infrastructure at a secondary data center. Now we can go ahead and dynamically help them to fail over. So what that might look like is if I had workloads running over on the left, that went down, I need to run them on the right. What you're going to find is many people have DR runbooks that they have to go ahead and execute on a series of tasks, right? You turn on the servers, configure networking, go ahead and restore from backups, et cetera, et cetera. And we allow them to do that because we have a copy of that data set, because there's no way to get something up and running if I don't have the data there, as well as the infrastructure to do so. But what if we were to tell you we could automate those manual steps from a runbook perspective and put that into software? Well, that's one of the things we did, and we created something we call Control Shift, which is really an orchestrated workload mobility and DR solution that we came up with. So that gives us the ability to, if this site on the left were to go down, for example, within minutes, we can automatically flip over and have all those applications running over on the secondary data center. Now, that's a pretty nice capability, but if we take it a step further, there's some other people talking about how do we leverage the cloud. So not only can we do it from data center A to data center B, for example, or from data center A to colo, what if I want to leverage public cloud provider? Well, it turns out we can do the same thing with our capabilities. So we wrote our software in such a way that it can either run on-premise, or we've basically cloudified our software so it can run within a public cloud provider. So in this particular case, as opposed to replicating my backup to a secondary site, I could replicate it to the public cloud, in this case, AWS S3 buckets. Now, the nice thing about that is not only can I have the backup copy living in S3, and by the way, we're pushing in compressed, deduplicated data, so I'm putting in a smaller footprint into it, but I'm also making that available, so if the primary data center went down, I can also direct mount that storage into VMC on AWS, where I can go ahead and deploy the host resources required to run the application, mount the storage, and I can be up and running in minutes there as well. So we give a tremendous amount of flexibility in terms of how that works. So when we look at it, there's 6+ different deployment patterns that clients can choose. And one of the things we've noticed about healthcare in general is there's a strong interest and desire to improve business continuity, failover, and recovery times. So one of the things you might be asking yourselves is, where are you on this journey? And based on your aspirations and what you're looking for, you can see there's a lot of different footprints we can help you with. Now, moving from there, I wanted to take you through one quick scenario example, and then I'll go ahead and wrap up my presentation for today. So the first point is really talk about this idea of, let's say I have a Datrium system running in my data center, which you're seeing on the left, and it's doing all the good things we talk about blanket encryption on the system, very fast performance based on the platform, et cetera. But what happened, and then we go ahead and replicate that storage, right? For example, in this case, to a public cloud provider, and there's 3 patterns. I can do site to site, site to public cloud, or site to a colo. So I have my applications running. I replicate it to a public cloud provider. If something were to happen at my facility and it goes down, the good thing is Control Shift kicks in and it executes against those steps within the software to allow you to automatically spin up your compute in a software-defined data center within VMC. It then spins up your VMs and apps per the plan, and those are the steps we had talked about previously. And now I'm successfully running within a public cloud provider if my primary data center went down. Let's say my data center then comes back up and gets restored. Because the way we do things in terms of a universal catalog and universal deduplication, I can fail back the data, and I'm only sending the delta, the newly created data back. I shut down the apps and the host that I no longer need. I'm back up and running in my primary data center, and Control Shift is sitting there in its idle state, letting you, watching your environment and making sure that it's running the way you need and is available for the next emergency if needed. So that's a quick example of how that works. And when I talk about that, right, it's the ability to run it primary on-premise to another data center or the public cloud, but there's some other things that are coming. So one of the things we're really excited about is the ability to allow customers to leverage our software, our DRaaS software, to connect to existing storage footprints and storage arrays that they have, and still leverage our ability to fail over to secondary sites or to the public cloud. So that is something that's coming out in the next month, and it's going to be a really nice, new, exciting capability, because what it does is it doesn't force you to replace your existing storage. It allows you to go ahead and leverage that. So that being said, why Datrium? You know, we're really designed for this multi-cloud environment. One of the things we've done, I think, very interesting is the ability to give you license portability. Whether you're running on-premise or in the cloud, you can move those licenses. From an operations perspective, like I said, everything is VM level granularity or container granularity. So from an operations perspective, it allows you to do more with less. We've shown you how we can reduce the IT spend pretty significantly. And then really protecting yourself from ransomware is a huge advantage we have. So because of the way we encrypt everything, because of the way we write to the durable capacity, because of the snap store we have, we can allow you to effectively go ahead and flush the system, restore from a backup, instantiate a new VM, and you're off and running and don't have to pay those ransomware bills. So whether it is running on-premise, leveraging us for backup as a service, or leveraging us for DR as a service, we've got a full suite of capabilities that I hope you find to be pretty interesting. So that being said, I'd love to invite you to come see us at HIMSS. We'll be there March 9th through 13th at booth 4027, or you can visit us at our website. So thank you again for your time. I appreciate it today, and I'll take any questions if there are any.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great presentation, Jeff. Really cool stuff there. We do have some questions for you from the audience. Let's see. First one, they're asking if you can clarify, do your DR capabilities work from data center to data center as well as data center to public cloud?
Yeah, so good question. I think that's one of the interesting things about it. You know, many hospital or healthcare organizations have data centers. They might have a primary data center. They might have a secondary data center somewhere. So we not only can fit within that footprint, but if they want to start treading towards the public cloud, or even maybe save money by shutting down or selling off that second data center and using the public cloud, we can really support both different deployment methods for customers. So it gives them a lot of flexibility.
Okay, very nice. Very nice. Another question. Not sure if you can answer this one. You talked about Glenn from the hospital there. They're asking if he would be willing to do a reference call.
So here's the thing. Glenn Milan is a very nice man. He's a very demanding man, and he had a lot of high expectations in terms of what we delivered for him. Because of the way we were able to deliver and help his organization, he's actually stepped forward and said that he's more than happy to help spread the message in terms of how healthcare IT can be delivered, improved upon, and delivered to organizations. So yeah, he's willing to do that.
Wow. I mean, that says a lot. That says a lot. Must be working out very well for him. Another question here. Do I need to install Datrium hardware on premises to make this possible?
Yeah, so we are predominantly a software-driven solution, but one of the things you have to realize as it relates to government regulations, healthcare regulations, HIPAA, and whatnot, protecting your data and having a durable copy of that data is incredibly critical. So when you do a write in our software, it's actually writing to the flash cache within the server, but it also lives on a durable box or set of boxes we call data nodes. So on-premise, there is a hardware requirement, and it's a highly redundant, multi-power supply, multiple paths, multiple controllers, battery backed, all the stuff you would expect. That's for on-premise. As it relates to interfacing to public cloud, that is 100% software driven. So our file system we built is actually running within S3 natively, and that gives us some pretty nice capability. So predominantly software driven, but on-premise there is a durable capacity tier that we write to as well.
Very nice. A lot of flexibility there. So, I mean, what should people do to get started with this? Is there an easy way to try this out?
Yeah, there's a lot of different methods by which you can go ahead and check us out. One of the things I thought might be helpful is when you look at that whole kind of DR plan or business continuity process, and you start to talk about from an infrastructure maturity model where your organization is, by looking at those different deployment patterns we have, it really gives you maybe an aspirational direction in terms of where you want to get to and how you might want to get there. So one of the things we're happy to do is meet with any customer to talk about how to get them from where they currently are to maybe a different level of business continuity. We also can certainly do demos of the system. We can do proof of concepts with customers. We're happy to come on site and actually learn your environment and then show you if we were to run it on a Datrium-based infrastructure, what would be required to do so. So for example, in Glenn's case, he cut his server footprint in half when he was able to migrate over towards Datrium. So that's not only saving on licensing costs, but it's saving a lot of hardware as well as maintenance fees associated with it.
Yeah, sounds like a great solution for IT organizations related to healthcare, hospitals specifically. Really great presentation. Thank you so much for being on the event today, Jeff.
Outstanding. Thank you very much.
All right. I'm going to throw up another question here, give you the opportunity to respond about any sort of follow-up. There's one more thing I wanted to mention in the way of resources. ActualTech Media just completed authoring a couple of our Gorilla Guides in the Gorilla Guide book series for Datrium, and I was just checking. Those are online in their content library at datrium.com/resources. So if you want to dig into that a little bit more, that's how you would do that. Additionally, I just threw up here a few options for other things that we would be happy to send you for follow-up. I'm going to leave that up there for a minute and give you guys a chance to respond. So on the Gorilla Guides, there's a couple of them focusing on modern disaster recovery, a lot of the same stuff that was just talked about in this presentation, but goes a little bit deeper into the topics, and there's some helpful illustrations in there and that kind of thing. So I'm extremely biased since I was involved in the authorship, but I think they're super helpful pieces of material. So datrium.com/resources if you want to snag a copy of one or multiple Gorilla Guides to dig deeper into this topic. Okay, looks like most of you had a chance to respond there. And so finally, we're going to move on and hear from Nutanix.
Now I'm excited to introduce our next presenter on today's EcoCast. That is Leah Gabbert, Senior Marketing Manager for Healthcare at Nutanix. Leah, thank you for being on the event today.
Thank you, David, and thank you all for joining us for this webinar today. I'm really excited to be here and for our time together today as I walk you through how Nutanix is truly modernizing and securing healthcare IT today. Like David mentioned, I'm Leah Gabbert. I'm the Senior Marketing Manager for Healthcare here at Nutanix. And here's a kind of a quick agenda about how we're going to spend our next 15 minutes together. Really, we're going to start with Nutanix at a glance, understanding who we are as a company, and then moving into what we do. You hear a lot about hyper-converged infrastructure. What does that really mean? Then we'll move into the mechanics of how we do that, understanding our place of Nutanix in healthcare, and then we'll end with really the pressing questions of why Nutanix. In terms of Nutanix as an organization, we're a relatively young company. We've been around for about 10 years now. We were founded in 2009. We have approximately 55 employees around the world, and we have an impressive global customer base of over 14,000 customers. Approximately 1,500 of those customers are healthcare organizations, both in the United States and abroad. And that number continues to increase for us every quarter, which is exciting, of course, to see because it's really evidence that the healthcare industry is embracing what Nutanix can provide to healthcare organizations as they work to answer technology and infrastructure challenges and just those pressures that are facing them daily. Another thing that we're really proud of is our Net Promoter Score. Our NPS has remained over 90 for the past 5 years. This is really important to note because the IT industry average is in the low 30s. I bring attention to this specifically because this NPS is really a testament to our customer commitment. Nutanix prides ourselves in putting our customers first in all that we do. We embody the idea that your success is our success and take pride in delighting our customers. In fact, we strive to make sure that our technologies and our capabilities are designed in partnership with our customers instead of a more traditional vendor type relationship. So what does Nutanix do? Well, quite simply, Nutanix makes infrastructure invisible. Our solutions allow IT teams to focus on applications and services that power their business. The Nutanix Enterprise Cloud Platform leverages web-scale engineering and consumer-grade design to natively converge compute, virtualization, and storage into a resilient software-defined solution with rich machine intelligence. The result is predictable performance, cloud-like infrastructure consumption, robust security, and seamless application mobility for a broad range of enterprise applications. Now, I won't spend time digging into our entire portfolio of solutions that you see here on this slide, but just know that holistically, we allow customers to maintain one singular vehicle to run any application on any platform from any location. Also, it's important to note that our solutions are hardware agnostic, so you can run them on HPE, Dell EMC, or any other hardware platform that you see here at the bottom of the slide. This flexibility allows our customers the option to follow a path towards a cloud consumption model, whether that's a public cloud or a private cloud or even a hybrid cloud. If it makes sense for them, it provides options to run workloads on that environment. We're seeing a trend among our healthcare customers that, given patient privacy and data security regulatory requirements, it's not possible, and quite frankly, it doesn't make sense to run all applications on the public cloud. So a hybrid cloud approach seems to be the best option, where some mission-critical applications are run on-prem, while other workloads are run on the public cloud. It's really interesting to see how the cloud is being consumed on a day-to-day basis. So how do we do it? Well, Nutanix is very committed to the pioneering of HCI architecture. HCI, of course, being hyperconverged infrastructure. This is technology that we pioneered about 10 years ago. Our idea was to really remove the complexity from traditional data center architecture. The traditional legacy data center design is really a siloed approach consisting of compute, network, and storage, like I mentioned before, then the ability to run the virtualization or software stack on that. The simplification of this architecture is HCI. It collapses the compute, network, and storage into a single platform and then runs applications on that single platform. When I say our platform removes complexity, I mean it. It's so easy. We offer one-click simplicity that allows our customers to deploy and use infrastructure in the same day and manage those applications and infrastructure from a single console. It's really interesting. We have testimonials directly from our customers who are running application upgrades from their laptop at home while fixing dinner. It's that easy. Nutanix is the undisputed leader in hyperconverged infrastructure. In fact, for the third year in a row, Nutanix has been recognized as a leader in the 2019 Gartner Magic Quadrant for hyperconverged infrastructure. And as you can see here, we are top ranked in the Forrester Wave in both current offering and market presence, as well as product strategy. Shifting gears a bit, what is really shaping the digital transformation of the healthcare industry? We hear that a lot, but what does that really mean? Well, we know that traditionally healthcare as an industry isn't widely recognized as being early adopters of technology, but really over the last several years, that tide has changed dramatically. Healthcare organizations are becoming more focused on leveraging technology to optimize clinical and operational outcomes, to modernize data centers, to enhance security, and more. We've also seen an uptick of focus around consumer and patient engagement trends, clinician and all staff satisfaction, personalized medicine, treatment, and value-based care. Where does Nutanix fit with all those healthcare apps? And in terms of where Nutanix fits within that healthcare space, if you look at traditional application stacks from access and presentation all the way to data and analytics, our success has really been anchored around the EHR or EMR applications like Epic or Meditech or others, which can run on the Nutanix platform. In fact, it's really important to note that Nutanix is fully Epic certified, and as far as Meditech goes, Nutanix is the only HCI provider that is fully certified to support full stack Meditech applications. When we talk about imaging or PACS VNA applications like Fujifilm, AGFA, or Watson Health, among others, those applications are also optimized to run on Nutanix. In addition to the EHR or EMR and imaging systems, we understand that you're running a lot of other applications, but Nutanix is really designed to run them all. We know some healthcare organizations can be running up to hundreds of applications at a time. Nutanix can effectively remove the complexity that IT departments would typically need to deal with as you design your infrastructure to run clinical or IT workloads. We understand that you have to simplify and enable your IT organizations to continue to support the business objectives of your healthcare organization in a real, meaningful way. Even outside of those clinical workloads and applications, there are a lot of other business critical applications that are certified to run on the Nutanix platform, whether it's around branch office or ambulatory sites. We recognize the importance of VDI or data and analytics, and we are aware of the increasing trends around machine learning, which have direct correlation to patient engagement and consumerism, which continue to gain traction every day. When you think about Nutanix and our own healthcare journey, really it comes down to having a platform that is simple and completely scalable, one that can successfully help customers build out in different phases depending on their familiarity with the technology and, of course, the level of investment that they are willing to make. What we have seen most often from our healthcare customers has been a three-step process, where our customers start their engagement with Nutanix around using some of those core applications and running them on HCI, and really looking to improve the delivery of those clinical and IT workloads. As they become more familiar with our core infrastructure, the next logical step in the journey is asking the question, which applications make sense to migrate to an enterprise cloud, whether that's public cloud or private cloud, or like I mentioned earlier, perhaps the most secure option, the hybrid cloud approach. Our customers understand our technology and move to secure critical patient data and automate compliance with regulatory policies. Then finally, having a platform for our customers that can truly enable multi-cloud deployment with any number of applications that unify operations across different clouds. So why Nutanix? Here's why. We bridge the gap between IT extremes. We offer the flexibility and scalability of public cloud without compromising security. We offer the control of on-premises without the CapEx. We offer the agility and security of private cloud without the complexity. We can help organizations deliver on the promise of hybrid cloud and manage everything together to get the best of all worlds. We let our customers start small and grow big thanks to the seamless scalability of the Nutanix platform. And why Nutanix in healthcare? Well, it's simple. We have a diverse partner ecosystem that continues to grow. We reduce downtime. We improve operational efficiency. We improve user experience. We reduce project time. We improve information security, and we deliver high availability and disaster recovery. Of course, more information can be found on our website, nutanix.com/healthcare. And please visit us at HIMSS 20 in Orlando next week at the Nutanix booth, number 1171. We have unparalleled opportunities for you to get hands-on with all of our solutions and see just how effectively Nutanix can simplify and modernize your clinical and operational workloads while keeping security top of mind. And with that, David, did you want to open it up for questions?
Absolutely. Yeah. Great presentation, Leah. Thank you very much. We do have some questions here for you from the audience. Let's see. First one that came in, they're asking about case studies. Do you have any referenceable case studies?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like I mentioned before, we have over 1,500 current healthcare customers worldwide. Several of those are referenceable customers, and our case studies for those customers can be found on our website, nutanix.com/healthcare. That's a really great question.
Okay, awesome. And then you were talking about the upcoming HIMSS conference. Can you tell us what's Nutanix doing there at HIMSS?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a really big and fun presence at HIMSS this year. So you can find Nutanix in our booth number 1171. We will have 6 demonstration pods where you can literally get hands-on with any of our solutions and get questions answered by all of our subject matter experts. We have an in-booth theater that will be running daily presentations from some of our customers who will be sharing testimonials and our big evangelists for the work that we do. We also have Nutanix subject matter experts that will be presenting on Nutanix, hyperconverged infrastructure, trends that we're seeing among our customers, imaging, and even some Epic expert conversations as well. And then our partner ecosystem, like I mentioned, is really large and diverse. We've welcomed several of our partners into our in-booth theater as well, and they'll be presenting on stage with us as well. I'd also like to welcome people to visit our Pause and Relax booth, number 3821. This is our second Nutanix booth at HIMSS, but this is something that we've partnered with the Pet Alliance of Greater Orlando. We will be having adoptable puppies available for play and cuddles, and if you fall in love, we can even coordinate adoptions on site as well. So don't forget to take a breather and a mental recharge break and come over and play with some puppies as well.
Wow, sounds like a lot of fun. You're making me want to go to the HIMSS conference as well. So, I mean, for those who can't make it to HIMSS this year and they're interested in seeing Nutanix in action, what do you recommend? What options do they have for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what I would encourage everyone to do is to check out our test drive. We offer Test Drive. It's an immersive, hands-on lab that's available at your fingertips. You can even access it today. But this allows you to really try Nutanix out for yourself, understand what we mean when we say things like one-click simplicity and things like that. You can see that in action totally for yourself on demand. So you can access that at nutanix.com/test drive. And like I said, that's a really immersive way to just be able to see for yourself how easy this is and what solutions we can bring forward to you.
Excellent. A great presentation, Leah. It's been excellent having you on the event today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, David. Have a good day.
For more information, visit nutanix.com/healthcare.
Excellent. Thanks again, Leah. So one last time, an opportunity here to request any more information if you want to dig deeper on what was discussed during that presentation. After we get through this one, we're done. You made it. I've got a few wrap-up items to go through with everybody, just housekeeping and what's next and that kind of thing, and also one more Surface Pro to give away. I'm going to leave the poll up for just one more minute here. I want to make sure that nobody misses an opportunity to collect some more information. And the responses have slowed down, so I'm going to move along. Giveaway time. All right. Second winner today is, I think you would say this, Olivier Talon from Georgia. Olivier Talon from Georgia. We'll be in touch via email to arrange the delivery of that prize. Congratulations, and thank you for being on the event today. So, just a couple things before you go I want to make you aware of. One is, if you're not already subscribed, make sure to check out our podcast, 10 on Tech. I'm the host of that show, and we interview people to talk, have the same kind of conversations that we had here today on the EcoCast, except in 10 or 15 minutes. So it's a really short, quick, consumable way for you to stay up to speed on the latest. And you can find that anywhere that you find your podcasts, iTunes, Google Play Store, Spotify, and so on. If you are on the event today and you are a vendor who would potentially want to sponsor one of these events, we'd love to hear from you and talk about how we can make that happen. You can definitely reach out to us at connect@actualtechmedia.com, and we can get you the details on what that looks like, and we can have you on the next event. Lastly, I want to make everybody aware of another event that's coming up soon that I think is going to be really exciting and you should consider joining. It's called the Doing More with Less Day, highlighting technologies that help boost IT efficiency. And we've got a number of great presenters on that event and would love to have you participate. So you can find the registration for that at events.actualtechmedia.com. as well as pages for all of the other events that we've got coming up in the next couple of months here. So check those out, see what else might be of interest to you. Again, thank you everybody so much for joining us today. Make sure and check out the handouts in the handouts section here. Take some literature with you when you go, and we'll see you on the next event. Thanks everybody.